What can a loser like you do? My brother sneered as he said this. Living with him and his wife, I saw how they took advantage of our mother. She came to our house looking worn out and crying, saying, "I don't want to go back there." I couldn't shake the image of her distress as I clenched my teeth. "Are you really going to take care of that old hag? Can you even support her?" He mocked me. He treated our beloved mother so poorly and ridiculed me too. Anger bubbled up inside me, and I gripped my phone tightly, but I kept my voice calm and replied, "If you're okay with it, I'll take her in. My name is Rena, and I'm 30 years old. I've been married for 4 years and live a happy life with my kind husband and our 2-year-old daughter. We are blessed in our work and enjoy a joyful life." I looked at the calendar and checked my phone. Today is my mother's birthday. Happy 58th birthday, Mom. Are you okay? Is anything bothering you? I texted her and soon got a reply. "Thank you for your message. I'm doing fine. Don't worry. How are you and your family? I always pray for your happiness." Even after reading her response, I couldn't shake my worry. Right now, my mother lives with my brother and his wife in our childhood home. Our family used to consist of 4, my father, my mother, my older brother, and me. My father was strict and had old-fashioned views, controlling everyone around him. Because of him, my mother and I often felt oppressed. My maternal grandfather worked for my paternal grandfather's company. My mother was chosen to marry my father because of his family's wealth and power, almost like a hostage. When my father was supposed to take over the company, it failed because of the economic downturn, but they still had some money left. I never saw my father work. He spent his days drinking and yelling at my mother and me. Living in fear of his temper, my mother obeyed him. He believed women were inferior and treated my brother as if he was special. My brother got everything he wanted, while I could never express my desires. "Women shouldn't be greedy," my father would say. This made my brother feel entitled and always treat me like I was less than him, constantly mocking me. Growing up like this was painful, and I dreamed of leaving home as soon as I could. Even though I had excellent grades, my brother, who did poorly in school, was allowed to attend expensive private schools while my father wouldn't let me go to high school. He would say, "Women don't need education. It's a waste. You should get married soon or work a low-paying job." I remember when my brother called me a dumb girl and said I didn't deserve to go to high school. I cried out of frustration at the unfairness of it all. In the end, my mother secretly arranged for me to attend a boarding high school. Despite the tough situation at home, she always supported me. "Rena, it's okay. You can escape from here. You will find happiness," she told me. I remember my mother saying these words before I went off to high school. I graduated from university thanks to scholarships and money I earned myself. Since high school, I rarely returned home. I didn't attend my brother's wedding, and I didn't tell them when I got married, but I stayed in touch with my mother and occasionally met her. I truly owe who I am today to my mother. She is very important in my life. She was a gentle soul who may have seemed weak, but she loved me with all her heart. I always wished for her happiness. When my father died from his unhealthy lifestyle, I didn't attend the funeral, but I got shocking news from my mother. On his deathbed, my father told my brother and his wife to move back home and live with our mother. Ever since then, they have been living with her. I wanted to protest, but my mother said it was okay, so I didn't say anything more. Instead, I kept in touch with her. One day, I got a call from my brother, and I worried if he would take care of our mother properly. Was she really okay? I always felt uneasy about the situation. Eventually, my fears came true. One night, the intercom of my apartment rang unexpectedly. When I answered it, I found my mother standing there, looking ragged. Despite it being late fall, she wore a thin old short-sleeve shirt and a worn-out skirt. Her hair was messy, her cheeks were hollow, her eyes looked sunken, and she was trembling. I was shocked by her appearance and raised my voice. "Mom, what happened to you?" "Rena, I'm sorry to show up like this," she said in a weak voice, tears streaming down her face. I welcomed her in, and my husband quickly made her a warm drink and got her a blanket. Once she settled down, Mom began to speak slowly. After she started living with my brother and his wife, Nicole, things changed. They treated her like a maid. They made her do all the housework, and if it wasn't done to their satisfaction, my brother would scold her, calling her useless and a nuisance, even threatening to throw her out. Nicole called my mom an old hag and sold her few precious pieces of jewelry and clothes. They spread false rumors, saying my mom was a troublesome mother-in-law. Mom lost weight rapidly, and when she got sick and bedridden, they still forced her to do chores. Seeing her talk through her tears broke my heart. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were suffering so much?" "Rena, I've caused you hardship since you were a child. I didn't want to burden you any further, she replied. I thought if I could just bear it, my mom said, her voice trembling. Then, I received an email. Oh, it's from Nicole. Where are you? You didn't do the laundry, and there's no food. Do you want your things to be sold again? The email made my mother's hands shake. I'm sorry, Rena, I don't want to go back to that house, she said. Hearing my mother's words, I pulled out my smartphone and dialed the number she had given me. After the dial tone, my brother picked up. Who's this? This is Rena, Mom's here with me. Oh, it's you. That old hag left without doing her chores? Tell her to come back immediately. It seems you've been treating Mom quite badly. I've heard everything, I replied, my voice trembling with anger. My brother just snorted and said, what about it? What can a dimwit like you do? You've been overworking Mom to the point of sickness, and you think that's okay? I won't let her live with you any longer. Do you really think you can support that old hag? She's been a housewife all her life, can't do anything, and has no money. Are you going to take her in? No more calling her old hag. She was a great housekeeper. A voice that sounded like his wife came from far away. They had been treating my dear mother so poorly, and even making fun of me. I couldn't stand it. A surge of rage filled me toward my brother and his wife, and my grip on the phone tightened. Still, I said calmly, if you say so, brother, then I will take Mom in. If you're going to take her, that's fine. It'll clear out some space in the house, and I'll be relieved. Understood. Mom will be living with me, so don't contact us anymore. I hung up the phone. Rena, I'll take good care of your mother, my husband said, taking my hand. Our daughter happily climbed onto my mother's lap, calling her grandma, and my mother hugged her, crying. Half a year later, our doorbell rang repeatedly. When I looked out, my angry brother was there, and next to him was a grumpy woman in a flashy outfit, probably his wife, Nicole. What do you want? How did you find out where we live? I asked. We looked it up. Just open up. There's something we want to ask you. My husband and mother stood by my side. I had my husband take our daughter into another room while my mother and I handled the situation. The first thing my brother said when he walked in was, "What's this about our house being sold?" "Oh, you got the message?" "Yes, my company bought your house," I replied calmly. "Your company? What are you talking about?" Exactly what I said. I'm the head of a well-known real estate company around here, so it's my company. By the way, doesn't the company you work for subcontract to us? When my brother heard the name of my real estate company, his face changed color. That's ridiculous. You, a dropout and a loser? You can't be the head of that company. If you're suspicious, why don't you call to verify? But please don't cause any trouble for the company, I said, showing him my business card. As soon as he saw it, my brother fell silent, his face turning red. After graduating from university, I had worked hard and was hired by a major real estate company. Later, I was headhunted as an executive for a new company. By the way, I met my husband at work, and we got married. He's a landowner, so I think we're considerably wealthier than you. There's no reason for you to call me a dropout or a loser. I can easily support Mom. My brother, wide-eyed and gritting his teeth, didn't respond. His wife looked shocked. Damn it, what about our family home? What do you mean you sold it? My brother yelled, nearly foaming at the mouth. My mother, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. You may not know this, but after your father passed away, the house was transferred to my name. So, I sold the house and land to Rena's company using my rights. You should leave as soon as possible. What? What are you talking about, old woman? Wait, what's going on? You said that as the oldest son, the house was yours, didn't you? My brother and his wife were panicking, their faces changing rapidly. What's wrong with me selling something that's in my name? Sorry to break it to you, but I've broken free from your influence. I won't live as you dictate anymore, my mother said firmly. My brother yelled at her. What the hell are you talking about, you worthless old hag? His wife joined in. That's right, you've never worked a day in your life, just being supported by others. What are you talking about? Mom works hard. She manages an apartment building that my husband and I own. She's very friendly, always keeps the place clean, and is loved by the residents. And she gets paid for it too, I replied firmly. Hearing this, my brother, who had been standing, fell silent and slumped into a chair. Nicole whispered something in his ear. Knowing my prideful brother, he must have felt crushed by this unexpected defeat at the hands of his sister and the rejection from our mother. If there's nothing else, you can leave now, I don't want to be involved with you, I said. My brother lifted his head. His face, which had been filled with rage, now showed a fawning grin. Alright, but listen, you're rich now, right? Then give me some money. I recently lost my job and I'm having money troubles. What? I was shocked at my brother's audacity. Hey, Mom could give money to me too. You got money from selling the house, right? Just think of it as helping out your adorable son and give me some cash, then I'll leave. Just as I was about to respond, my mother raised her voice. Enough already, have some shame. I was taken aback to see my usually gentle mother speaking like that for the first time. My brother and his wife looked stunned too. I apologize for raising you to prey on your sister like a shameless creature, but there are things you should and shouldn't do. Don't disturb us anymore, go home. Hearing this, my brother started to tremble again. Shut up and listen, old hag, you're telling me what's what. Be prepared, I'll squeeze every dime of your inheritance from you. Nicole added, yes, give us the money already. To these two, my mother coldly replied, that's if there's anything left. From now on, I plan to spend all the money from the sale of the house on myself and Rena and her family. I have no intention of leaving a single penny for you two. What the hell, you old crone, my brother yelled. I'm cutting ties with both of you from now on. Please stay away from me and Rena. Leave that house immediately. Seeing my mother stand up to them like this made me so proud. I wanted to applaud. I was genuinely happy that she, who had always been oppressed and obedient, was finally free from the curse of that house. Do you understand now? Please go home, I said, rubbing my mother's trembling back. Damn, no, we won't leave. We'll squat in that house until we get the money at least. My brother and his wife glared at us. Then, a low, calm voice echoed in the room. What do you mean you won't leave? Standing there was my husband. In his gentle voice, he spoke to my mother-in-law. I'm sorry, could you please watch our daughter? You did great, don't worry about the rest, everything will be fine. Hearing my husband's words, my mother said, thank you, and got up from her chair. Looking at my husband, my brother and his wife turned pale, their eyes widening in surprise. What? Who are you? Nice to meet you, I am Rena's husband. By the way, what were you saying to my wife and mother-in-law earlier? He asked with a straight face. My brother and his wife suddenly became docile. That was to be expected. My husband is tall at 6'3", with a solid build and a strong, imposing face. He holds a black belt in judo. Despite his peaceful nature, his kindness toward me, his intellect, and his love for our daughter make him seem intimidating to those meeting him for the first time, especially to someone like my brother, who could only show off and look down on women. My husband is the type that's difficult to handle. Oh, I just remembered I have something to do, so I should be going. Yes, let's go. My brother and his wife quickly changed their attitude and left. Their retreat was so comical that I had to hold back my laughter. In the quiet house, my husband touched my shoulder and said, you did well, you must be tired. My mother appeared, holding my daughter, her face bright. We embraced each other without saying a word. Fast forward 1 year, my husband, my mother, and I continued to share a harmonious relationship. My mother kept her job as a building superintendent, and compared to that night when she showed up looking worn out, she was now lively and healthy. She adored and took care of my daughter, which was a great help to me. Of course, my daughter adored her grandmother too and often stuck to her. Watching them brought happiness to both my husband and me. As for my brother, believe it or not, he divorced shortly after that incident. He lost his house and his money, and when he showed my husband his pathetic state, Nicole quickly left him. Now, Nicole is trying to remarry through dating, but her nasty nature and ulterior motives for money make it hard for her to find anyone. My brother was kicked out of his family home, jobless, and living alone in a rundown apartment while struggling with part-time jobs. Of course, I have no intention of helping him since he brought this upon himself. My mother and I plan to live without getting involved with him any further. By the way, we are planning to build a large 2-family home soon. We could continue living in the condo my husband owns, but as my mother pointed out, it would get cramped as our daughter grows. Let me use all the money from selling the house, she said, and we gratefully accepted. We chuckled at her enthusiasm and looked forward to living happily together in our new home.
Hi there, my name's Felicity, and I'm 37 years old. Let me tell you about an experience I had and how I quickly dealt with it because I don't let people take advantage of me. Unlike many stories I've read here, I actually had a good relationship with my mother-in-law before everything fell apart. Yes, it's surprising, I know. We got along great, and our relationship was smooth and filled with warmth, perfection, and mutual respect. As for my husband Frank, he was the love of my life, my best friend, and my partner in everything. To me, everything seemed perfect. I'm not being naive or ignoring any red flags. Sure, we had our arguments like any normal family, but in the end, everything was fine, and there was no sign of any problems. So, you can imagine how shocked I was when this crazy story happened. Maybe someone can help me figure out what went wrong because to this day, I still don't know. Let me tell you what happened and why I decided to take revenge on my husband and mother-in-law for what they did to me. I had planned something special for our family. It was supposed to be a vacation for just my husband and me, but I thought about Tiana, my mother-in-law, who had been widowed for 4 years and must have felt lonely. So, I decided to include her in the vacation plans. I mainly pay for everything, accommodation, meals, and activities, while my husband and Tiana covered whatever else they wanted. But essentially, I was paying for everything. I wanted to treat Tiana and Frank to a once-in-a-lifetime vacation in Spain. The thought of strolling through the vibrant streets of Barcelona, enjoying delicious tapas, and basking in the Mediterranean sun filled me with joy. I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to create lasting memories and deepen our bond. When I presented the idea to them, they loved it too. I meticulously planned every detail of the trip, from the charming boutique hotel overlooking the stunning coastline to the exciting flamenco dance performance we would attend together. The excitement was palpable, and I couldn't wait to surprise Tiana and Frank with this grand adventure. Little did I know that the events awaiting me would shake my trust and shatter the illusion of our perfect little bubble. I was about to embark on a journey that would forever change my perception of family loyalty and the depths of human deception. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Allow me to take you back to that fateful day when our dreams of Spain were still full of hope and promise. I stood in the living room, holding the plane tickets tightly in my hands, a big smile on my face. Frank, Tiana, gather round. I have a surprise for both of you. They exchanged puzzled glances, curiosity written on their faces. Tiana, with her wise eyes, tilted her head slightly. What's all this excitement about, my dear? With a flourish, I revealed the tickets and shared my plans for the Spanish adventure awaiting us. I watched their expressions closely, hoping to see joy and gratitude in their eyes. Frank's face lit up, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Felicity, you truly are something else. I can't wait for this incredible trip. Tiana wore a softer smile, her gaze meeting mine. Oh, my sweet Felicity, you've truly outdone yourself. This is a gift beyond measure. I'm deeply touched. At that moment, my heart swelled with pride and contentment. Their reactions validated the love and effort I had poured into this surprise. I thought this vacation would be the glue that bound us even tighter, creating unforgettable memories and strengthening the bonds that already seemed unbreakable. But as you might have suspected, this story takes a dark turn. Beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect relationship, a web of deceit and betrayal was waiting to catch us. When the truth came out, it tested the limits of forgiveness and family bonds. We boarded the plane for our 2-week adventure with high hopes. The first week was magical. We enjoyed paella, explored historic landmarks, and danced to flamenco music. Laughter and joy filled the air, and I believed our bond was unbreakable. However, a storm was brewing. On a sunny Monday morning, I woke up to an empty hotel room. Confusion and unease gripped my heart. I frantically called my husband and Tiana, but their phones were silent. There were no notes, bags, or signs of struggle, just an unsettling silence. It felt like I had booked this trip for myself alone. Minutes felt like hours as questions flooded my mind. Had they gotten lost? Had something happened to them? But the lack of evidence suggested otherwise. A chill ran down my spine as I reluctantly accepted the truth. I was left alone in a foreign land. Just as despair threatened to consume me, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Tiana. Relief washed over me, mixed with confusion and hurt. How could she leave without a word? With trepidation, I answered the call. Tiana, where are you? What happened? Her voice, tinged with resignation and frustration, didn't sound like the sweet lady I knew. It was colder. Felicity, I thought I should at least call since you kept blowing up my phone. Sorry for disturbing you. I was just wondering where you two went. Your bags aren't here. I was concerned something bad happened. Her next words, said with chilling indifference, shook me to the core. We left you. But why? What happened? I'm sorry, but I couldn't bear to spend another week in your company, so I had to leave. What are you talking about? Did I do something wrong? Yes, I mean, how could you be so dense? Dense? Excuse me. You sprung this trip on me, practically forcing me to go with you. I just couldn't remain disingenuous any longer. Let me be clear, Felicity. I don't enjoy your company. Sure, we can spend a couple of hours together at family events, but 2 weeks. I tried to be civil and endure it, but I could only manage 1 week before I lost my mind. I'm sorry, but Frank and I are heading to the airport. We can't be around you any longer. Shock reverberated through me. The revelation struck like lightning, unraveling the trust I had so naively built. How could our bond crumble under unspoken grievances? Questions overwhelmed me. What had I done wrong? What did I do to deserve such harshness? Was there no chance for reconciliation? With confusion and heart ache, I asked, I didn't know you felt this way, Tiana. And you had no reason to. I always made it seem like things were fine between us. Then why not tell me? Why not sit down and discuss any problems? I can't put my finger on it. You just irk me. That's childish. You can't stand me just because I irk you. Grow up, Tiana. I thought I offended you, but I didn't do anything wrong, did I? Not necessarily, but it doesn't matter. What matters is how I feel about you, and I find you annoying. Then why agree to come on this trip? It was a free trip to Spain. No one would turn that down. But as the days went by, I grew tired of your antics. What antics, Tiana? What did I do that was so bad you had to leave me alone in a foreign country? She had no answers, and my impatience grew. I was shocked, hurt, confused, and angry. But most of all, I was sad. I needed to know what my husband, Frank, had to say about all this. Let me speak to Frank. Casually, Tiana passed the phone to Frank, who had likely been listening the whole time. He sounded just as indifferent and cold as his mother. Hello, really, Frank? You decided to leave me too. I didn't leave you because I don't like you. I left because my mom needed me to take her home. So you knew about all of this? Well, yes. How long have you known about your mother's apparent hatred toward me? For some time now. I was hoping this trip would bring her closer to you, but I was wrong. Okay, but what I'm failing to understand is why none of you approached me about this. We're all adults, aren't we? If there's an issue, we solve it. It's not like we haven't had arguments in the past. We sat down and solved them. What's different this time? Frank, like his mother moments ago, failed to answer. The only thing I can conclude is that your mother hates me for a silly reason she knows isn't valid. Maybe she's jealous or something. Maybe I have something she can't have, and she knows she can't speak up about it without sounding foolish, so she's beating around the bush. Am I right? Their resounding silence confirmed my suspicion. I'm honestly shocked. I didn't know you two felt this way about me. I hope you have a safe flight home. I cut the call, pacing around the hotel room, still trying to wrap my head around what exactly the issue was. I stopped wondering what I did to deserve this treatment. 47 years on this planet had taught me that sometimes people hate you for seemingly no good reason. They're jealous or bitter because they see you at peace with yourself, and that enrages them because they struggle with their self-worth. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experienced this, but the last people I expected this behavior from were my own family. After sobbing for some time, I had an epiphany. Let me take you back to that fateful moment when I decided to take control of my destiny and seek revenge against these two who had wronged me for no good reason. It was a pivotal moment that would forever change the course of my life. As I wiped away my tears, a newfound determination welled up within me. I refused to waste any more emotions on their pathetic actions. No, it was time to show them they couldn't trample over my heart and get away with it. With trembling fingers, I dialed the number of my childhood friend, Arlo. We had been through thick and thin together, and I knew I could trust him with my darkest secrets. After pouring out my heart to him and explaining the painful betrayal I had experienced in Spain, I cautiously asked if he could assist me in my quest for justice. Arlo, always the loyal and mischievous friend, listened intently, his voice filled with a mix of concern and excitement, reassuring me that he had my back. Felicity, my dear friend, you're a force to be reckoned with, and you know you can count on me for anything. So what are you planning to do? Well, Arlo, you know how your construction company always has excess sawdust. Yes, it can be quite a hassle to get rid of sometimes. Well, I think I finally have the perfect use for it. His curiosity was piqued, and my plan tumbled out like a carefully crafted script. describing how we would orchestrate the ultimate act of retaliation. My plan involved delivering bags of sawdust to Tiana's house, infiltrating every corner and crevice, and leaving an indelible mark of chaos and betrayal. Arlo couldn't help but smile at the brilliance of my idea. It was a subtle yet impactful way to remind Tiana of the stress she had unleashed upon my life. Armed with Arlo's expertise and my newfound determination, we set our plan into motion. But how will we get inside the house before they arrive back home? You need to get the spare key hidden under the potted plant on the patio. Then you'll be in. Wow, you thought of everything, huh? I'm not one to be played with. I think I'm reasonable, but if they want to act childish, I'll go even lower. Aita girl. As the hours ticked by, anticipation swirled within me. Arlo assured me the mission was complete, and soon I would witness the fallout of our carefully orchestrated chaos. Then, like a sweet melody in my ear, my phone chimed with a message from Arlo. I eagerly opened the pictures he had sent, and there it was, a sight to behold. Tiana's once pristine home now resembled a post-apocalyptic wasteland, drowned in a sea of sawdust. Every nook and cranny had been touched by our mischievous hands. It was a scene straight out of a surrealistic painting, an embodiment of the chaos that had unfolded in our lives. I called Arlo, and his laughter echoed through the phone. I couldn't help but join in. It was a cathartic release, a shared moment of triumph against those who had betrayed me. I expressed my heartfelt gratitude to Arlo, acknowledging his willingness to tread the path of mischief with me. He simply said, "Naughty can be so satisfying." As the clock ticked away, I could feel the tension building within me. How would Frank and Tiana react when they walked through the doors of their once beloved home? The anticipation was almost unbearable, a heady mix of nerves and vindication. I couldn't help but relish the thought of their bewildered faces and disarrayed emotions. Hours later, my phone erupted with frantic energy. It was Frank, his voice laced with panic and disbelief. He described the scene that awaited them, the sawdust-covered house that stood as a testament to their betrayal. My heart danced with wicked delight as I listened to his exasperated voice. At that moment, I knew the message had been received loud and clear. Their actions had consequences, and the chaos they had sown had come back to haunt them. Frank's panicked words were like sweet music to my ears, a validation of the power I had reclaimed. "Felicity, it's just awful. Mom is in hysterics." I decided to reveal the part I had played in this. "It serves both of you right. How could you leave me here alone without a valid reason?" "Wait, Felicity, was this your doing?" The wailing and panic I heard in the background stopped. Suddenly, I heard my mother-in-law say, "Give me that," before shouting in my ear, "Did you do this? How could you do this to us?" "I have no idea what you're talking about. Have you considered that this is just your karma?" "Oh, come on, Felicity, we all knew it was you. Who else would have access to my home?" It's very easy to break into someone's home nowadays, Tiana, especially if you don't have any security cameras installed. Which, by the way, you should seriously consider doing to prevent things like this from happening again. Honestly, Felicity, how can you do this to us? Where are we supposed to sleep? This sawdust is making my lungs ache. Oh, that's right, you probably forgot to get the keys to my house, huh? Well, that's a shame. I'm guessing you two are going to have to stay in yet another hotel. But for how long? Until I decide to come back from my vacation, I guess. I mean, I pay for 2 weeks, and who knows, I might feel greedy and decide to extend my stay. Frank then took the phone from Tiana as she began to bawl once again, mourning her ruined furniture. "Felicity, this was foul. How could you do this? I don't know why you're assuming I had anything to do with this. How could I? I'm currently relaxing in the hotel jacuzzi." I held back my laughter as the two of them were clearly confused about what had happened. Even though they suspected I had something to do with it, which I obviously did, they didn't have any solid proof. So I basked in the glory of knowing they were frustrated with nowhere to direct their anger. As I bid Frank farewell on the phone, a sense of contentment washed over me. I had taken control of my narrative, leaving them to grapple with the consequences of their actions. I know what I did was quite foul and even dangerous, considering how old Tiana is. Spending even one night in that house could lead to serious health consequences. But I knew they wouldn't dare dream of staying there. It was too savage to be habitable. They just had to rely on staying in a hotel a little longer. Because I didn't want my money to go to waste, I stayed that extra week in Spain, enjoying the culture as I intended. Meanwhile, my husband and mother-in-law were undoubtedly worried, trying to find a cleaning company to take on such a daunting task. I didn't know how long it would take to get the house professionally cleaned, but I knew that in the meantime, my mother-in-law would have to stay with us in my home, and I knew she would just be irritated the whole time since she apparently couldn't stand my company. This should serve as a reminder to all of you. Some people need to learn the hard way. If you can dish out your own justice, then by all means go ahead and do it. Really give people something to be mad about. My mother-in-law, Effie, said to me, "If you don't go on the trip I planned, you're no longer part of this family. Since you married my son, you should understand this. It's just common sense." She looked at my husband, Cody, for support. I stopped Cody, who seemed ready to say something, and agreed to her demand. Effie added, "Marrying someone so clueless is such a hassle. If you don't come, it's divorce. I'll teach you how to behave from now on." I was tired of her absurd comments, but I didn't realize this would be my last trip with my in-laws. I'm Liliana, 32 years old, and I run a small app development company that I love. My husband Cody is 37 and works at a bank. We are both passionate about our jobs and often talk about work for hours, sometimes until morning. Cody understands my work and we share household chores. We love our work so much that even after 4 years of marriage, we don't have kids yet, although we hope to someday. My family runs an auto parts factory started by my dad, now managed by my brother. Their support has allowed me to pursue my dream of starting my own app company. Even though our industries are different, I often consult with my brother and dad, and they are always supportive. Cody's family also runs a small factory. Being an only child, Cody was expected to take over, but he chose banking instead because the factory wasn't doing well, and his father, Andy, was considering closing it. Cody got interested in banking as a child after meeting a kind and impressive banker who helped his dad. Cody worked hard to become a banker and now works at a major bank. On the surface, our marriage seems fine, but it's not going well. Effie doesn't think much of my job because I can work from home. She sees it as a frivolous job and doesn't understand it at all. I get it. For older generations like our parents, my job is hard to grasp. Even though I can work remotely, my job can be exhausting. I always adjust my work schedule around the in-laws' plans, so I never inconvenience them, but it's frustrating that they think remote work is easy just because it's flexible. Effie also disapproves of other things about our life. We built our house halfway between our parents' homes, and it takes less than 30 minutes to reach either house. As a dual-income couple, we manage our spending and savings separately, value our independence and privacy, and contribute a fixed amount for living expenses each month. Effie doesn't like this either. She thinks it's wrong for a couple to have privacy and secrets, and she doesn't consider us a true family. I believe Effie dislikes me and finds fault in everything I do. She adores Cody and sees me as a nuisance. Every time we meet, she makes snide remarks about us not having children yet. It's a sensitive topic for me, and I'd rather not be reminded. Childbearing is a delicate topic, and it's usually polite to avoid it. Effie brings up the topic of having children every time we meet, so I've started to avoid her. To avoid worrying Cody, I've been staying late at work on purpose. Effie has done many surprising things, but there was one incident I couldn't forgive. It happened on the day of my best friend's wedding. After her wedding, my friend was moving abroad, so we wouldn't be able to meet as often. I was really looking forward to celebrating her big day. However, a week before the wedding, Andy came to me with a request. He had an important business reception and wanted me there. Naturally, I refused. The only thing more important than my friend's wedding would be a parent on their deathbed. That night, when I got home from work, my in-laws were at our house. As soon as she saw me, Effie confronted me angrily. "Liliana, what are you thinking? Refusing Andy's request is outrageous. You're my son's wife. It's only natural to prioritize family obligations. Your refusal is unacceptable. You need to rethink your priorities," she yelled. Cody was there too, but he said nothing. After asking, I found out the reception was critical for the future of the company. To me, my best friend's wedding was just as important. I told Effie, "I understand what you both are saying, but my best friend's wedding is an important event for me, and I don't want to miss it. Besides, I'm not even an employee of Andy's company." Even Cody chimed in, "Can't you make an exception this time? This is really about the survival of the company." "I'm going to, and it's a family effort. We can make it up to you for missing the wedding. It's a family crisis. Can't you help us?" I was shocked. I never thought Cody would say such a thing. He knew how much I was looking forward to the wedding. Then Andy spoke. I understand Liliana's point, but this time we really need your help. That atmosphere made it hard for me to refuse. It wasn't just any reception. In the end, I reluctantly agreed to skip my best friend's wedding. I told my friend the truth and explained why I couldn't come. Given that I had previously talked to her about my family situation, she understood my predicament. In fact, she was more concerned about me. Unfortunate to have such a kind friend. I felt guilty for missing her big day, but once the decision was made, I had to focus on making the reception a success. On the day of the event, Cody and I arrived at the venue early and tried to contact Effie. However, for some reason, Effie didn't answer her phone. As I worried about what to do, the in-laws finally arrived at the venue just 10 minutes before it was set to start. To my surprise, they were in a disheveled state with messy hair and wrinkled suits and shirts. I was shocked and asked, Effie, what happened? What's with your shirt? Today is an important reception, right? She awkwardly responded, I just overslept. Liliana, make sure you're not rude. I was so close to snapping back with, I don't want to hear that from you, but somehow I managed to hold back. I really want to give myself credit for keeping my composure. During the reception, Effie, not knowing how to converse properly, made a series of rude comments to our guests. She meant them as jokes, but their strained smiles made it clear they weren't well received. As expected, we didn't secure the contract, and the reception ended without success. I thought to myself that it was to be expected. If I had known it would be like this, I would have preferred to go to my best friend's wedding. I was infuriated at being dragged into such a disastrous reception, ruining my plans and causing issues with the in-laws. To my dismay, they didn't acknowledge any wrongdoing. According to them, after such a lavish reception with no contract, it's almost like dealing with con artists. Good thing we didn't make a deal with such strange people, they said. I was speechless with astonishment. How can they be so blissfully unaware? After this incident, I became even more uncomfortable with my in-laws and started avoiding them. Unfortunately, there's something I can't avoid. Cody's family has a tradition of going on a family trip every year since his childhood, and it has continued even after we got married. Since our marriage, I've been expected to join these trips. Effie brings up the topic of having children every time we meet, so I've started to avoid her. To avoid worrying Cody, I've been staying late at work on purpose. Effie has done many surprising things, but there was one incident I couldn't forgive. It happened on the day of my best friend's wedding. After her wedding, my friend was moving abroad, so we wouldn't be able to meet as often. I was really looking forward to celebrating her big day. However, a week before the wedding, Andy came to me with a request. He had an important business reception and wanted me there. Naturally, I refused. The only thing more important than my friend's wedding would be a parent on their deathbed. That night, when I got home from work, my in-laws were at our house. As soon as she saw me, Effie confronted me angrily. Liliana, what are you thinking? Refusing Andy's request is outrageous. You're my son's wife. It's only natural to prioritize family obligations. Your refusal is unacceptable. You need to rethink your priorities, she yelled. Cody was there too, but he said nothing. After asking, I found out the reception was critical for the future of the company. To me, my best friend's wedding was just as important. I told Effie, I understand what you both are saying, but my best friend's wedding is an important event for me, and I don't want to miss it. Besides, I'm not even an employee of Andy's company. Even Cody chimed in, can't you make an exception this time? This is really about the survival of the company. I'm going to, and it's a family effort. We can make it up to you for missing the wedding. It's a family crisis, can't you help us? I was shocked. I never thought Cody would say such a thing. He knew how much I was looking forward to the wedding. Then Andy spoke. I understand Liliana's point, but this time we really need your help. The atmosphere made it hard for me to refuse. It wasn't just any reception. In the end, I reluctantly agreed to skip my best friend's wedding. I told my friend the truth and explained why I couldn't come. Given that I had previously talked to her about my family situation, she understood my predicament. In fact, she was more concerned about me. Unfortunate to have such a kind friend. I felt guilty for missing her big day, but once the decision was made, I had to focus on making the reception a success. On the day of the event, Cody and I arrived at the venue early and tried to contact Effie. However, for some reason, Effie didn't answer her phone. As I worried about what to do, The in-laws finally arrived at the venue just 10 minutes before it was set to start. To my surprise, they were in a disheveled state with messy hair and wrinkled suits and shirts. I was shocked and asked, "Effie, what happened? What's with your shirt? Today is an important reception, right?" She awkwardly responded, "I just overslept." "Liliana, make sure you're not rude." I was so close to snapping back with, "I don't want to hear that from you," but somehow I managed to hold back. I really want to give myself credit for keeping my composure. During the reception, Effie, not knowing how to converse properly, made a series of rude comments to our guests. She meant them as jokes, but their strange smiles made it clear they weren't well received. As expected, we didn't secure the contract, and the reception ended without success. I thought to myself that it was to be expected. If I had known it would be like this, I would have preferred to go to my best friend's wedding. I was infuriated at being dragged into such a disastrous reception, ruining my plans and causing issues with the in-laws. To my dismay, they didn't acknowledge any wrongdoing. According to them, after such a lavish reception with no contract, it's almost like dealing with con artists. "Good thing we didn't make a deal with such strange people," they said. I was speechless with astonishment. How can they be so blissfully unaware? After this incident, I became even more uncomfortable with my in-laws and started avoiding them. Unfortunately, there's something I can't avoid. Cody's family has a tradition of going on a family trip every year since his childhood, and it has continued even after we got married. Since our marriage, I've been expected to join these trips, but I'm always stuck with the chores and driving, arranging hotels, booking meals, and researching tourist spots. All these tedious tasks are my responsibility. If I dare to voice my opinion, I'm immediately shut down with "don't overstep." Even when we visit tourist spots, I'm often left to stay in the room, never getting to visit places I like. Honestly, I dread these annual family trips and always hope I might fall ill on the day. Now, this year's trip season has arrived. Despite their claims of being financially tight, my in-laws insist on a lavish trip as usual. I was tasked with finding the hotel. I planned meticulously to keep Effie, who's always complaining, in a good mood. Since I'm the only one who doesn't drink, I'm the default driver. I don't mind this as it spares me from their conversations. However, a crisis occurred just before the trip. I received news that my mom had collapsed and was in critical condition. In such a situation, going on a trip, even a short one, was out of the question. I lost my composure, thinking I needed to see my mom as soon as possible. It was the day before the trip, so I decided to cancel and started preparing to go to the hospital. Cody offered to come to the hospital with me, but I refused. I felt like he was implying my mom wouldn't make it, which I didn't want to hear. When Cody and I went to tell Effie we couldn't join the trip, she exploded in anger. "You're saying you can't go on the trip I planned. If you don't come, you're no longer family. As my son's wife, it's common sense to prioritize the family trip, right?" "Right, Cody." Effie said this, seeking agreement from Cody. Effie interrupted Cody, who looked like he wanted to say something, as if to say she wouldn't entertain any opposing opinions. In that situation, I was so dumbfounded that I couldn't find the words to speak. Nothing could be more important than being with my mom in her critical condition. Just as I was about to respond, my brother called. It seems Mom's condition is serious but a bit stable. I expressed my desire to rush to her, but he said visiting isn't possible right now due to a contagious disease outbreak. He mentioned that if she recovers, we could arrange a short visit later, so there was no point in coming immediately. Hearing this, I hesitated about what to do. Noticing my indecision, my brother asked what was wrong. I honestly explained the situation about the trip and my current dilemma. My brother, a bit angry, made a good suggestion. I hadn't thought of it in my distress, but the trip destination was near my parents' home. He assured me that I could quickly get to my family's house from the hotel if needed and there shouldn't be any problem. Indeed, that's true. If I can't visit the hospital, staying at home or at the hotel doesn't make much difference. Accepting my brother's suggestion, I told Effie, "All right, I'll go on the trip." Effie responded, "Goodness, if you had said that from the start, I wouldn't have had to get angry. It's hard to marry someone so naive. As long as you understand, if you don't come, it's divorce. Honestly, I'll have to re-educate you from now on." Cody looked surprised, but we agreed to go on the condition that I could leave for the hospital if needed. Effie remarked, "It would be trouble if our driver suddenly disappeared, right?" "Oh good, you're part of this family now, so our needs come first. Remember your role as my son's wife. This is a major event. The family trip should be your top priority." Her triumphant attitude and obvious excitement really irked me, but to avoid further trouble, I decided to endure it. On the day of the trip, I was so worried about Mom that I couldn't put down my phone, yet Effie was drinking beer from the morning. The back seat of my car, which I was driving, turned into a party scene. I was surprised to see Cody joining in the drinking. However, this was a trip for which everyone had rearranged their schedules. I told myself that it would be nice if everyone could enjoy the trip since we had all made the effort to come. During the trip, Effie's whims were relentless, demands to stop for the bathroom immediately or to go to the grocery store for more alcohol. I felt like a servant, but I was prepared to endure such things. That's when my mobile phone rang. It was a call from my brother, thankfully informing me that Mom had survived. Her condition had stabilized and she had regained consciousness. The diagnosis was subarachnoid hemorrhage. However, I couldn't be completely at ease yet as there were concerns about potential after effects. It was reassuring to have my brother keeping me updated as I was feeling anxious. When I shared the news of my mom's recovery with my in-laws, Effie commented, "If she's better, there's no need to bother us with such news. You're making a big deal out of nothing." Then Andy added, "Exactly, no need to spoil our trip with such grim news. We're supposed to be enjoying ourselves." I was disgusted that Andy shared Effie's view and didn't want to think of these people as my family. During the trip, it made a ruckus in the hotel, drinking and partying, which was truly embarrassing. This incident deepened my distrust of my in-laws. Thankfully, Mom's condition remained stable and there was no need to rush to the hospital, allowing us to complete the trip and return home. I was relieved. While I was sorting out the laundry, Effie came to our house. Wondering what it could be this time, she said, "You have a dryer at your house, right? We don't have one, so let me use it," and showed up with loads of laundry. I was exasperated and replied, "There's a laundromat with dryers. I have laundry of my own, and I'm using it right now, so it's not possible." She retorted, always so stingy. "Once you're done, it's fine. I'll come to pick it up tomorrow. Leave it finished by then," and attempted to leave her laundry in our washroom. Cody stepped in, "Go to a laundromat. Liliana is tired, and she has to work tomorrow. It's not possible." Effie got angry, feeling her son was defending me. She left in a hurry, spewing insults and slamming the door, leaving the laundry behind. In hindsight, if things had been different that day, maybe the course of events would have changed later. Effie returned and said, "During the trip, I realized something. Liliana, you lack the awareness of being married to Cody. We might face similar situations in the future. Since we couldn't discuss it, I decided that Liliana should make a decision." She put a family contract and divorce papers on the table. I was speechless. What even is a family contract? It was ridiculous and confirmed my belief that she can't have a normal conversation. The saving grace was Cody's reaction. He said, "I have something to say. If you keep imposing your biased views on us, I'll cut ties. I can't deal with this anymore. What do you think Liliana is? She's not your servant or housekeeper. You're the one who's mistaken about your position." Effie was stunned. Until now, Cody had hardly ever opposed anything. It wasn't because he agreed with Effie's ideas, but rather he kept quiet to avoid the hassle. Following Cody's words, Effie's anger turned towards me. "You've changed Cody since marrying him. He used to be so sweet. It's crazy for him to talk to me like that. You must have brainwashed him. Turn him back to the old Cody," she accused, confronting me. She believed I had brainwashed Cody into defying her. Then Cody spoke up for me. "The one doing the brainwashing is you. Always going on a rampage without listening to anyone's opinion. Frankly, you're a toxic parent. You never let me do what I wanted to after getting married. Instead of calming down, you started spewing your venom at Liliana. Enough is enough. I'm not going to divorce, and if you have a problem, you should stay out of our lives." Hearing this, Effie turned to Andy, who was with her, and burst into tears. Andy responded, "If that's what Cody thinks, then fine. We'll cut ties. Do whatever you want," and stormed out. I was surprised but happy that Cody stood up for us like that. Feeling frustrated, I told my brother about this. He became furious, saying he couldn't stay silent if they were acting this way. He decided to take action, which led to a tragedy in the in-laws' family. It turns out my brother's company was a client of my in-laws' company. We had kept our family's company name a secret to avoid creating the power imbalance. The in-laws had no idea they were dealing with my family's company. But with things as they were, we couldn't continue like this. Though I had been patient, avoiding mixing business and personal matters, it had reached its limit. My brother had been having issues with him not meeting deadlines. "You can't cherish those who don't cherish you," he said. I discussed it with Cody before talking to the in-laws, and he agreed. Cody also said he had had enough. My brother ended the contract with the in-laws company. It was a business decision. They had been a problematic company, not paying on time and missing deadlines. But we had tolerated it because it was Cody's family's business. There was no longer a need for that. Later, when my in-laws found out about this, they came to us in tears. Now, they're constantly apologizing. They pleaded with my brother to reconsider the contract, but of course, that was impossible. It was their responsibility for not meeting deadlines. They should have been grateful for our patience. Cody explained everything to his parents, but they refused to accept it and ended up cutting ties in a rage. Cody wasn't sad. He felt relieved. He had been torn and tired, struggling between us and his family. Since then, we've been living peacefully. I learned that Cody had been supporting his family financially, but he stopped that now. The in-laws factory went bankrupt. Even without this incident, it was on the brink of closure, drowning in debt. I heard that Cody had been paying for those annual trips, and it's astonishing how they could behave that way using someone else's money. Now, the in-laws are living modestly, and Effie has recently started working. I was honestly surprised to see her, who used to call herself a president's wife, working. One day, I saw Effie being scolded while doing a cleaning job. I felt bad for thinking this was karma. She'll learn the harsh realities of society and hopefully straighten up. As for us, work is going well. We haven't had children yet, but we enjoy our jobs and life is fulfilling. We're planning an overseas trip for our next vacation. For a while, we're thinking of enjoying life without children.
My name is Sophia, and I'm 31 years old. I work part-time at a neighborhood supermarket. Today is the beginning of November, and things are starting to get busy as we approach the end of the year. "Manager, can I talk to you about taking some time off during Christmas?" I asked. "That's unusual for you, Sophia. Why do you need time off?" The manager replied, "We're planning to spend Christmas at my husband's parents' house this year, so I need the 24th and 25th off." I explained. "Oh, that's the reason. Of course, that's fine. You always work hard, Sophia." The manager said, "Thank you so much. That helps a lot." I replied, "Isn't your husband's family far away? You're from around here, right?" The manager asked. "Yes, I'm from a neighboring town, but my husband is from Boston." I said, "Boston? That's quite a distance." The manager noted. "Yes, it is. We haven't been able to introduce Alexander to his grandparents yet." I said, "Even more reason for you to go. Don't worry about the store. Visit your family." The manager reassured me. "Thank you, I appreciate it." I said, "Alexander, my son, is 2 years old and goes to a childcare center. When I gave birth 2 years ago, a societal issue made it difficult to introduce him, and we hadn't found the right time until now. My husband, Lucas, is a medical technician at a hospital, and it's been hard for him to take time off, so we're eager to make it happen this Christmas." Later at home, Lucas asked, "Do you think you can get time off for Christmas?" "Yes, I got the okay from my manager," I replied. After Alexander went to sleep, Lucas and I shared a late dinner. "I'll call my dad. He tried to reach me while I was on my way home." Lucas said, "Whenever there's news, it's always your dad who calls. Your mom is the quiet type." I noted. "That's true." Lucas agreed. "My dad has a cheerful personality and loves to talk. My mom is quiet and speaks sparingly. We haven't had many chances to talk since getting married, so I'm hoping this visit will help us get closer." Lucas called his dad. "Hello, Dad. What's up?" "Got it. I'll talk to Sophia about it later," Lucas said before hanging up. "Dad is really excited to meet Alexander. He can't stop talking about it. He said to let him know if we need anything." I'm glad they're excited. My parents also said we should go this year to introduce Alexander. I said, "You love my parents too, don't you?" Lucas asked. "Yes, we both do." "We're in the same boat." I agreed. We were looking forward to our visit. On Christmas morning, after a 4-hour drive, we arrived at Lucas's parents' house just before noon. I saw my sister-in-law's car parked outside, so I knew they had already arrived. "Merry Christmas," we called out as we stepped into the house. Lucas's father greeted us with a big smile. "Good job on the drive. Take it easy." Today, my father-in-law was holding Ava, my sister-in-law's daughter. "Oh, Ava, you've grown so much," I exclaimed. "I'm 6 years old now. I'm in elementary school." Ava replied proudly. "Wow, that's amazing. Look, there's Alexander," I said, pointing to my son. Ava climbed down from her grandpa's arms and smiled brightly at Alexander, who smiled back. How cute, I thought. Come on in," my father-in-law said, inviting us inside. In the living room, we saw my sister-in-law Isabella and her husband. Isabella's husband smiled at us, but Isabella looked at us with a serious face. "Merry Christmas," he greeted them. "Merry Christmas," Isabella's husband replied, but Isabella stayed silent. I felt a bit awkward, but then Lucas came into the living room. "Henry, Isabella, Merry Christmas. We haven't seen each other in a while. How have you been?" Lucas greeted them. Isabella, who had been staring at us, finally smiled. Did they just ignore me? I wondered, but Lucas and Isabella's husband didn't seem to notice. Maybe I was overthinking it. I tried to brush it off and sat down. "Lucas, can you watch Alexander for a bit? I'm going to help mother-in-law in the kitchen," I said. "Sure, no problem," Lucas replied. I went to the kitchen to help my mother-in-law. "Merry Christmas, mother-in-law. Let me help you," I said. She glared at me, bumped my shoulder, and said, "You're in the way." Then she walked back to the living room. I heard her say, "Oh, Lucas, Merry Christmas. How have you been? What's going on?" I thought. First, Isabella ignored me, and now my mother-in-law was being rude. Did I do something wrong? I couldn't think of anything. We hadn't spoken much over the past 2 years since Alexander was born. Decided not to let it bother me for now and planned to discuss it with Lucas later. I returned to the living room and took Alexander from Lucas. My father-in-law handed Alexander an envelope. "Here you go, Alexander. Some gifts for you," he said. Alexander looked happy with the envelope. "Sophia, did you hear that? Alexander just said thank you to me." "What a smart kid," my father-in-law beamed. But I noticed my mother-in-law and Isabella grinning. It didn't seem like a friendly smile. It felt sarcastic. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. Time passed, and in the evening, we headed home. The next day, we visited my parents. Alexander was all smiles when he saw his grandparents. "Merry Christmas. Grandpa and Grandma have presents for you," they said. My dad handed Alexander an envelope too. "Sophia, did you hear that? Alexander just said thank you to me." My dad said, "You're kidding. That's exactly what father-in-law said," I thought. Everyone laughed. When I took the envelope, I felt it was unusually heavy. Why does it feel so heavy? I wondered. I hadn't noticed anything inside when I received it from my father-in-law the day before. Later, after giving Alexander a bath and putting him to bed, I decided to check the envelope. Oh, it is indeed $100, just like last year. I said to myself. I felt a bit guilty. We'll have to give something back in return, won't we? I said to Lucas. Just like last year. Lucas agreed. My parents didn't hold back because I'm their only child, and Alexander is their first grandchild. I felt a mix of amazement and gratitude. I noted down the amount of money received. My dad seemed to be in sync with my father-in-law. It was going to be an interesting year. Last year, since we couldn't meet, they had sent us a gift card for $100. They were thrilled to have a grandson. Remembering how happy my father-in-law was holding Alexander and talking the day before, I smiled and continued today. My father-in-law was holding Ava, my sister-in-law's daughter. Ava, you've grown so much, I exclaimed. I'm 6 years old now. I'm in elementary school. Ava replied proudly. Wow, that's amazing. Look, there's Alexander, I said, pointing to my son. Ava climbed down from her grandpa's arms and smiled brightly at Alexander, who smiled back. How cute, I thought. Come on in, my father-in-law said, inviting us inside. In the living room, we saw my sister-in-law Isabella and her husband. Isabella's husband smiled at us, but Isabella looked at us with a serious face. Merry Christmas, I greeted them. Merry Christmas, Isabella's husband replied, but Isabella stayed silent. I felt a bit awkward, but then Lucas came into the living room. Henry, Isabella, Merry Christmas. We haven't seen each other in a while. How have you been? Lucas greeted them. Isabella, who had been staring at us, finally smiled. Did they just ignore me? I wondered, but Lucas and Isabella's husband didn't seem to notice. Maybe I was overthinking it. I tried to brush it off and sat down. Lucas, can you watch Alexander for a bit? I'm going to help mother-in-law in the kitchen, I said. Sure, no problem, Lucas replied. I went to the kitchen to help my mother-in-law. Merry Christmas, mother-in-law. Let me help you, I said. She glared at me, bumped my shoulder, and said, You're in the way. Then she walked back to the living room. I heard her say, Oh, Lucas, Merry Christmas. How have you been? What's going on? I thought. First, Isabella ignored me, and now my mother-in-law was being rude. Did I do something wrong? I couldn't think of anything. We hadn't spoken much over the past 2 years since Alexander was born. I decided not to let it bother me for now and planned to discuss it with Lucas later. I returned to the living room and took Alexander from Lucas. My father-in-law handed Alexander an envelope. Here you go, Alexander. Some gifts for you, he said. Alexander looked happy with the envelope. Sophia, did you hear that? Alexander just said thank you to me. What a smart kid, my father-in-law beamed. But I noticed my mother-in-law and Isabella grinning. It didn't seem like a friendly smile. It felt sarcastic. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. Later, when we got home, I opened the envelope. Wait, what? I said, shocked. There was a single green leaf inside. I was at a loss for words. Lucas, startled by my reaction, exclaimed, What? A leaf? What on earth is this? He started laughing, thinking it was a prank. Let's call them. They might be concerned too, I suggested. Lucas, still chuckling, tried calling my father-in-law, but got no answer. They might be in the shower. Let me try calling Mom, he said. He called his mother, who answered. After a brief conversation, Lucas said, Mom sounds really apologetic. She wants to talk to you, Sophia. Is that okay? Sure, I replied, taking the phone reluctantly. As soon as I picked up the call, my mother-in-law went silent. Then I heard a faint laugh in the background that sounded like Isabella. Hello, mother-in-law. Like I would ever apologize to you, you poverty-stricken wife. Your children are as poor as a leaf. See ya, paper wife, she sneered and hung up. I was stunned. All the events of yesterday suddenly made sense. What was I going to do? Sophia, what's wrong? Lucas asked, noticing my distress. I don't know how to explain it, I stammered. Just then, Lucas' phone rang. It was his father. Maybe he's calling back, Lucas said, putting the phone on speaker. Dad, did you call by mistake? No, it's Ava, a child's voice replied. Grandpa's in the shower. I wanted to talk. Ava, we're in the middle of something important, Lucas said. Oh, really? Bye, Lucas, and bye, poor auntie, Ava said cheerfully. Wait, Ava, what did you say? Lucas asked. I said bye, poor auntie. Mommy and Grandma called you that earlier. They're chatting over coffee now, Ava explained. Ava, could you explain that to Lucas? I asked, trying to stay calm. Sure. Mommy told me that for poor people, money gifts are just a single leaf, Ava said innocently. Lucas looked at me, baffled. I stayed silent, trying to process everything. My sister-in-law noticed Ava on the phone and shouted, Ava. Just then, my father-in-law's voice came on the phone. We'll talk about it later. Feeling confused, I saw the phone being handed over to my father-in-law. Sorry about that. I was in the shower. Ava said something outrageous, didn't she? He said. So, you heard it too, Dad? I'm sorry, Lucas said. We're on speaker. Sophia's listening too. Sophia, was what Ava said true? Those words were directed at you, right? My father-in-law asked, sounding distressed. Yes, that's right. I confirmed. I'm truly sorry. Please don't blame Ava. She didn't mean any harm. My father-in-law apologized. No, it's all right. Ava's not at fault, I said, trying to sound calm. My father-in-law sighed deeply. I am really sorry. Please don't hold this against Ava. Thank you. I'll follow up on this matter. Isabella's here too, and will confirm things with her, my father-in-law said before ending the call. Lucas looked at me, clearly confused and apologetic. I'm really sorry, Sophia. I have no idea what's going on. I told him about all the discomfort I felt during our visits to his parents' house. We decided to wait for a response from my father-in-law. Surprisingly, the next day, Isabella's husband drove my in-laws and Isabella to our house. They stood before us, with my father-in-law and Isabella's husband apologizing profusely. We've done something truly disrespectful. We are sorry. We apologize for the outrageous behavior of my wife. The deep apology was appreciated, but my mother-in-law and Isabella didn't say a word. After being married for 4 years, I couldn't fathom the reason behind their animosity, especially since we rarely met. May I ask why you suddenly acted this way towards me? I asked, hoping to understand their behavior and possibly address any misunderstanding. There was no response. They were intent on ignoring me. My father-in-law, enraged by their attitude, shouted, "Answer her." Finally, Isabella grudgingly responded, "Well, Mom was originally against the marriage." "Wait, that's it. And why?" I asked, perplexed. "Why did you let him marry a woman like this? A woman who doesn't even wear a single brand name item, who dresses in mass-produced cheap clothes?" She spat out. Indeed, I wasn't interested in branded items, unlike Isabella and my mother-in-law, who both liked and wore them. "Are you saying that's the only reason you insulted me?" I asked, astonished. "That's all it is. I just don't want you in our family. I wish you would divorce soon and disappear." "How could you say something so rude? And you, why are you supporting such a woman? You're an elite employee at a top-tier company. You should choose someone suitable for our family, right?" Despite Lucas being a well-qualified medical professional, we can't accept such a woman as a family member, can we? Upon hearing Isabella's true feelings, her husband was speechless. But it didn't end there. My mother-in-law's next words revealed where this attitude came from. Originally, I had found a suitable partner for Lucas. Despite that, he brought home some unknown woman and declared they were getting married. It was a true shock. "What? You were doing such a thing without telling us?" Lucas asked, incredulous. "There are limits to what's acceptable, Mom. Sophia is my wife," Lucas said, trying to defend me. "It's fine, isn't it? She's just a poor girl. Her parents didn't seem very impressive either, quite impoverished, don't you think? She wasn't wearing a single branded item. In other words, she's from a struggling household that finds it hard to make ends meet. What? What are you saying? Lucas shouted, horrified. And to love a child born of such a woman? Impossible. It would taint our precious Ava. We had plans for her to marry a friend's child. Upon hearing his mother's true feelings, Lucas was speechless. I felt the same, wondering how I could have missed all this if I considered that my father-in-law called not out of interest but disinterest. Everything makes sense as harassment. Well, it's fine. If you divorced, please do it as soon as possible. Let's go. We don't need to get involved in this farce, my mother-in-law said dismissively. Just as my father-in-law was about to say something, the living room door dramatically opened, and my parents walked in. It's been a while. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, my dad said calmly. Did Sophia call you? Yep. It must be hard to be talked about like that without saying anything, right? He continued. When I heard that my father-in-law was coming over, I had contacted my parents. They had heard some of the terrible comments from outside the door. Their timing was perfect. My parents approached my mother-in-law with serious faces. They took out business cards from their pockets and said, "Here you go." Amazingly, they dropped their business cards at her feet, as if to say, "Pick it up." I had to suppress my laughter. Isabella rose to their bait, picking up the card and shouting, "Such arrogance from poor people. You didn't even wear any branded items today, and your clothes look mass-produced." As soon as she looked at the card, she was startled. "Mom," she exclaimed. My mother-in-law also looked at the business card Isabella held. "You two are executives of Valet Clos." "Yes, my husband and I started out together. He's an executive at the headquarters, and I'm the head of planning. Our daughter quit when she got married. You know that, right?" My mom replied calmly. Both of my parents currently work at the headquarters of Valet Clos, a famous low-cost apparel brand. After graduating from college, I had spoken to my father-in-law and mother-in-law about myself, but my parents had never explained their situation. So she could go back to work anytime she wanted, right? Isabella stammered. "What? That's amazing. You work at that famous fashion brand's major corporation," my mother-in-law said, her tone changing completely. "So, what do you mean we're poor? That my grandchild is the grandchild of a poor wife? Because you opposed the marriage, it's okay to harass us?" My mom continued, her voice firm. "It's not. We're really sorry," my mother-in-law said, but her apology was only because my parents held executive jobs. It was beyond the point of being resolved by just an apology. Henry looked disappointed as he said, "I thought it was a good thing to leave Ava with my parents. But I'll drive you home. But after that, we'll live separately." "What? What are you talking about?" Isabella asked, shocked. "I'm glad I got to see your true face. Let's discuss our divorce when we get home," Henry said. Henry then left the house. At that moment, my father-in-law also stood up, bowed deeply to my parents, and said, "I'm really sorry for what happened." He then turned to us. "I'm really sorry. I'll be in touch." Looking sternly at my pale-faced mother-in-law, he said, "Be prepared when you get home before exiting our house." My mother-in-law and Isabella hurriedly grabbed their belongings and rushed out. I caught my breath at home after my parents kindly offered to pick up Alexander from the child care center. Later, I received a call from my father-in-law. He told me that my mother-in-law had been forcibly sent back to her parents' house. It's a de facto separation. Apparently, they made this decision because they were unsure what she might do to Alexander. But it's a separation with the premise of divorce, and they are waiting for the right timing. As for Isabella, the divorce was finalized immediately. After she returned home, Henry obtained custody of Ava, Isabella, of course, has taken refuge in my mother-in-law's house. But she is getting a good scolding from my mother-in-law's mother and is currently on a job hunt. We continue to live our busy daily lives. It feels really good to not only see our child grow up, but also to share this joy with his grandparents.
Hi, my name is Myra, and I'm 31 years old. Before I share my story, I want to make it clear that my husband and I come from wealthy backgrounds. However, unlike my parents, we are thankful for our wealth and don't look down on others. Now, let me tell you about our revenge on my parents. I grew up in a wealthy family, but we didn't always have money. For a long time, my family was middle class. My parents had regular jobs while also trying to run their own business. When I was 7, they quit their jobs to focus on their business full time. The next 3 to 4 years were tough. Sometimes I wouldn't see my parents all day because they were so busy. I felt neglected and held a grudge against them for a long time. After all, you can't expect a child to take care of themselves. But when their business became successful, they made up for it, though maybe too much. Soon, we had a lot of money and my parents started attending fancy parties with high-class people. I hated these parties, but I had no choice but to go. I couldn't wait to turn 18 so I could leave. My parents quickly became the snobs they used to dislike before they got rich. When I turned 18, I got into a great university in my state and moved out. That's where I met my husband, Daniel. At first, neither of us acted or looked like we were rich, and we had a real connection. After about 5 months, we told each other about our wealthy backgrounds and were surprised to learn that our families were part of the same social circles. Daniel's family was even richer than mine. His father, Cyril, was one of the wealthiest men in our state, but he kept his personal life private so not many people knew about his family. That's why I hadn't heard of Daniel. Daniel also hated being in the spotlight, so he avoided fame. We dated for about a year before meeting each other's parents. We met his parents first, and they were wonderful and accepting of me. Then it was time to meet my parents, so we arranged dinner at their favorite restaurant. Hi Mom, hi Dad, this is Daniel. Hi Daniel, I'm Norman, and this is my wife Margaret. It's a pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to meet you too, Daniel replied. So Daniel, what are you studying? My dad asked. I'm doing media and communication, Daniel said. And what do you plan to do with that? Mom, Dad, this isn't a job interview. Stop interrogating him, I said. It's okay, Daniel replied. I plan on becoming a social media manager. Oh, that's a profession for sure, my dad said sarcastically. Dad, there's no need to be so judgmental. Tell me, Daniel, did you grow up with wealth? My mom asked. Mom, that's an incredibly offensive thing to ask, I said. Oh, so the answer is no. I could tell just by looking at him. I don't mean to be rude, but if you don't mind me asking, what does my wealth have to do with my relationship with Myra? Why, it's everything. We worked really hard to give her a life filled with luxuries. We don't want her to live like a peasant after she gets married. That's enough. I don't care about any of that. I love Daniel, and that's all that matters. You're just young and naive. This relationship will end once you realize this man can't afford your lifestyle. Are you serious? No offense, Daniel, but my daughter deserves better than you. I don't know how you expect me not to take offense to that. Myra, there's a handsome, successful man we met at a party. He's older but very successful. Do you want us to set you up with him? Wow. How dare you insult my boyfriend and try to set me up with someone else while he's right here? You need to realize that your relationships affect our reputation. You need to choose men who will benefit you and our social status. Daniel will do anything for you. I've had enough. You judge Daniel without even knowing him. We know his type enough. He is not a type. He is a person with his own personality and feelings. The fact that you can't see that because of your obsession with social status is disgusting. Don't bother talking to me unless you want to apologize. Myra, sit back down right this minute. You're causing a scene. See what Daniel is doing to you. You've never behaved like this before. This isn't Daniel's doing. I've just reached my limit with you. I grabbed Daniel's hand and stormed out of the restaurant. I couldn't believe how quickly they judged him. They didn't even try to know him and immediately dismissed him as inferior. I apologized to Daniel repeatedly, but he told me there was no need. He admitted he didn't look rich but didn't expect my parents to act that way. I agreed. After that, I only spoke to my parents when absolutely necessary until I graduated. Daniel and I stayed strong and moved in together after graduation. We focused on our careers before taking any other steps in our relationship. Daniel worked in various places before joining his dad's company, avoiding the spotlight for as long as he wanted. Eventually, my parents apologized for being rude to Daniel. We accepted their apology but kept low contact because I knew they didn't genuinely accept him. They only apologized to keep up social appearances. Occasionally, they'd invite us to their parties, and we'd attend out of courtesy. Every time, my mom would look at Daniel in disgust, even though he wore expensive, branded clothes without flashy logos. 3 years after graduating, Daniel proposed, and I was overjoyed. We shared the news with his family together, but I decided to tell my parents alone. I knew they would say something mean, and I didn't want Daniel to hear it. So, I went to their place for dinner. "I have something to tell you both," I started. "Oh, please tell me you broke up with that pathetic boyfriend of yours." "Actually, we're engaged. I'm going to marry him next spring." "What? No, you're not. I wasn't asking for your permission." "You should have. You know how we feel about him. You don't like him because you think he doesn't have money. That's not a valid reason. If you marry him, you have to come to all our events with him. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Do you care that much about your reputation? Does my happiness not matter at all? You have no idea how hard we worked to get where we are today. We sacrificed everything, and we won't let a man of Daniel's status bring us down." "I know exactly how much you sacrificed. I was there. I lived for years without my parents. For people who look down on the middle class, you forget that you were once there. Daniel has the skills and ability to succeed. Why can't you see that we want what's good for you? You don't want what's good for me, you want what's good for you. Don't project your issues onto me. Look, we're very open-minded. But this is where we draw the line. We never imposed our opinions when you were dating Daniel because we thought it was just a fling. But this we cannot accept." "That's a lie. You two were the least open-minded people I know. You've done nothing but tell me how bad Daniel is for me throughout our entire relationship. I don't care if you accept that I'm marrying him because it's happening, and you can't do anything about it. We can do something about it. If you marry this man, you will no longer be our daughter." "Wow, so you'll disown me if I don't listen to you. You'd rather disown your daughter to save your social status than be happy for her. That's not it at all. We want what's best for you. If you can't see it, then we see no reason to support you. I'd like to see how your poor husband will support you. He's done more for me than you ever did. How dare you? We gave you this life. Don't you dare say we didn't do the best for you. While I am grateful for everything you did, neither of you ever cared about my happiness. Daniel makes me so happy, and I want to spend the rest of my life with him. Go ahead, disown me. I'll be happier that way because I cannot stand going to any more of your obnoxious parties. I'd like to see how this happiness of yours pays the bills. And don't you dare come to us when you need help with money, because we will not help. I'd rather be drowning in poverty than come to you for help." I left my parents' place immediately, feeling incredibly hurt. I wasn't naive enough to think they would readily accept him, but I had hoped they might have changed in the past 3 years and would see how happy Daniel made me. I drove away and parked a few blocks away before finally letting myself cry. I loved to put on a tough act, but they were still my parents. Sure, they were snobby and mean, but I still loved them, and it hurt to see that their love for me was so conditional. That's the one thing parents aren't supposed to have: conditional love. Eventually, I made my way back home, and Daniel comforted me. He was incredibly mad at my parents and asked if I wanted him to do something about it. I didn't want him to act against them because I saw no reason to become like them to prove a point. I decided then and there that the best way to get back at my parents was to live happily. That was what they didn't think I was capable of, so I would prove them wrong. Daniel and I spent the next few months enjoying life and planning our wedding. On the day of the wedding, I was the happiest girl alive. Daniel asked his dad, Cyril, to keep our marriage a private affair because he didn't like the limelight, and neither did I. Cyril was happy to do that and spoiled us with some of the most expensive gifts. After we got married, Daniel took up a permanent role at his father's company and became the head of the social media marketing team. Not to brag, but Daniel brought in a lot of money, especially by drawing more attention to the company. I was also advancing in my career and doing great. I didn't speak to my parents at all, not just because I didn't want to, but because they never reached out to apologize. Over the next 5 years, Daniel and I had a great time. We were doing amazing in our careers, and our social lives were thriving. Daniel slowly warmed up to the idea of being in the limelight, and we began attending more high society parties. We would run into a few of my parents' friends at these parties. When they asked about my parents, Daniel would subtly imply that they weren't the kindest of people. We thought this was just a petty move with no real impact, but it turns out it did have an effect. My parents started being shunned by their social circles. We realized it was working when we ran into them at Daniel's sister's engagement party. She wanted a big, extravagant celebration for the elite of society, and it was very exclusive. Daniel and I were obviously invited. When we saw my parents, they were shocked. "Myra, Daniel, what on earth are you two doing here?" my mother asked. "Well, we got an invite and thought it would be rude not to show up," I replied. "How did you get an invite to this party? This is an engagement party for business tycoon and millionaire Cyril Reed. Are you sure you're at the right place?" "We're sure we're at the right place. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have places to be and people to socialize with." "Hold on, how did you both get invited here? This is a party only for the elites of our city, and last time I checked, you barely even came close to middle class," my father added. "Do you really have no shame putting your daughter down like that?" Daniel interjected. "What daughter? This could have been you, Myra, but you gave it all up for this creature," my mother snapped. "Wait, that's it. Myra must have got an invite in our name, and then Daniel made her not tell us and instead took him along. That would explain why he had to go around practically begging to get in here. Do you really think I'd want to attend any party if I got the invite for you? I would have passed the invite on, but I'd never attend because the people there would all be rich snobs just like you," I shot back. "Okay, that's enough. You will tell us how you got these invites or we will call security. The chances that the two of you crashed this event are too high. I mean, what more do you expect from the lower classes?" my father threatened. At that moment, Cyril Reed himself walked up. "Hi there, what is this I'm hearing? Is my son causing any trouble?" "Son?" My parents' faces went pale. "Yes, this is my boy Daniel." "Oh, these two were just accusing my wife and me of crashing this event because they assumed we were lower class," Daniel said with a grin. "Oh no, that's not what we meant, but I do want to know how Daniel is your son. You don't have the same last name," my father stammered. "My wife wanted him to have her last name. Feminism and all that. Anyway, he's my pride and joy, and I would ruin anyone who hurts him. So, do we have a problem here?" Cyril's voice was firm. "Only one. Why do Daniel and his wife not have glasses of champagne in their hands?" Cyril asked with a smile. "I like them. They can get their glasses and join me. I need them to meet a few people." Excusing ourselves, Daniel and I walked away, laughing at the look of absolute shock and horror on my parents' faces. Cyril knew of my parents' views about his son but had never said a word out of respect for me. He only stepped in to assert dominance when necessary. Daniel and I enjoyed the rest of the night, celebrating his sister and her fiancé to the fullest. We socialized a lot, and I ended up making some great friends. I felt free from my parents' snobby behavior, and it felt great. We tried our best to avoid my parents, but that didn't last long. Toward the middle of the event, they found us again. "Hey, guys, could we talk for just a few minutes?" my mother asked. "Oh, I don't know. My dad expects me to be with him," Daniel replied. "Yeah, about that. How come you never told us who your dad was?" my father inquired. "I didn't see why I had to. Besides, you already made up your mind about him. Was there any point in telling you who his father was?" I responded. "Of course, there is. Do you even know how much power that man has?" "Wait a minute, is this why we've been getting fewer invitations to social events?" my mother asked, panic creeping into her voice. "How would we know?" Daniel replied. "Are you really ruining our lives because we didn't know whose son you were?" my father demanded. "No, that's not why. You treated us like we were low lives because you assumed we were part of the middle or lower class. That is unacceptable, and we see no reason for you to have any sort of social life until you prove yourselves to be better people." "Who are you to decide that?" my mother snapped. "You return us back to our previous status or else." "Or else what? You're going to try and ruin our name? Good luck doing that." "Hold on," my father interjected. "We're sorry. We called you over here just to talk to you and apologize. But we're letting our negative emotions get in the way. We shouldn't have treated you that way, Daniel. Could we make it up to you in any way?" "Oh, you most definitely could. I want you to leave my sister's engagement party right this minute." "What? But we worked so hard to get the invites to this event," my mother exclaimed. I worked hard to show you that I cared and loved your daughter, and you rewarded me by not only treating me poorly, but also disowning her. My father is a kind and genuine man, and he would hate to know that such vile people attended an event of his. Just give us some time to change. I promise we'll be better people, my father pleaded. The time to prove yourself has long since passed. Aita or I will have security come get you, and you know how people will start talking when they see security escorting you out. You're a cruel person, my mother hissed. I'm definitely not as cruel as you. Now get out. I was in awe of the way Daniel stood up for himself. I knew he was holding back out of respect for me, but if there was one thing he hated more than anything, it was people who treated others based on what they could get in return. That was the textbook definition of my parents. My parents thankfully left the event without another word. They knew better than to draw any more attention to themselves. After they left, they texted me to apologize for the way they treated Daniel. Once again, their apology was rooted in their newfound awareness of Daniel's status rather than genuine remorse for their actions. This only made me angrier. I couldn't understand how some people could be so dense and ignorant. This was why I didn't stop Daniel from doing what he did. It didn't take long for people, especially my parents' friends, to notice their absence at the party. They would ask me, and Daniel would explain how he kicked them out and why. People were horrified to learn what my parents were really like. Many of them stopped associating with them afterward. My parents barely saw invitations to any events after that party. As their social standing crumbled, my parents' company began to suffer. Their business depended on these elite events as they supplied many of the products and services required. Becoming social pariahs meant nobody wanted to tarnish their own reputation by associating with them. Realizing they were losing revenue, my parents' apologies turned into curses. They sent us long, hateful texts outlining how I was a disappointment and how I had ruined our family. It hurt at first, but it also felt great to finally put my parents back in their place. As for Daniel and me, we were doing great. We pretty much went back to living our lives normally after the event. We were planning a vacation to Spain within the next 2 weeks to symbolize the start of a new beginning for us, one without my parents involved. My name is Amelia, and I'm 33 years old. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've been married to Dylan for 6 years, and we have a 5-year-old daughter named Ruby. Since we got married, we've been living with my in-laws, Aaron and Scarlett. Both they and Dylan treat me more like a housekeeper than a family member. We live in Dylan's hometown, a small farming community known for its close-knit, neighborly feel. My in-laws are farmers, and ever since I married Dylan, they've given me lots of farm chores, housework, and even neighborhood committee duties. No matter how much I protest, they just say it's the duty of a daughter-in-law. While the people on the committee are nice and the housework is manageable, the farm work is particularly exhausting. I eventually learned to operate machinery like the combine harvester, but it was hard at first. Other tasks like weeding still tire me out. You really are slow, aren't you? You act like you're some kind of aristocrat, Scarlett would say. I'm sorry, Scarlett, I'd reply. Move faster, with your awkward posture will take forever. Aaron would add. I'm sorry, Aaron. Every day was filled with apologies to Aaron and Scarlett, whose words were cutting. Occasionally, they call me harsh names like stupid and inept, leaving me feeling emotionally and physically drained. One day, I asked Dylan, "Hey, could you please talk to Scarlett and the others? My body can't handle this." Dylan responded with an annoyed smile, "Come on, my parents are getting older. Help them out, we're family." That was his dismissive answer. But then his expression turned stern. "What else are you good for except the chores my mom asks you to do?" You're in no position to complain. I couldn't respond to his cold gaze and words, managing only a forced smile and saying, "All right, I'll do my best." Usually, I would have had a retort, but by then my senses must have been numb. I had thought Dylan was the one, especially given his gentle smile before we got married. How quickly he changed after the wedding night. I realized too late that his smile was merely a facade. While he never raised his hand to me, Dylan became emotionally cold and left me feeling isolated. The only blessing in my married life has been our daughter, Ruby. She's turning 6 next year and will be starting elementary school. After preschool, she runs to me and we embrace. As we hug, I stroke her head and snap out of my daydreaming. Mom, today at preschool, walking back from preschool with Ruby is the most peaceful moment of my day. Mom, does your hand hurt? Ruby looks at me with concern. I had a bandage on the hand I was holding Ruby's with from a scrape while working in the garden. Thank you, I say. I smile at Ruby and say, I'm fine. Face relaxes. As soon as we step in the door, Scarlett's sharp voice greets us. You're late. You're spending too much time just picking up a child. Ruby and I both flinch. I wish she'd at least greet Ruby with a how was your day? Scarlett, Dylan, and my in-laws have always been cold, not just to me but to Ruby as well. I quietly tell Ruby to put down her bag. As she heads to her room to escape Scarlett, I hear Scarlett snort. Amelia, don't you plan on having any more kids? Ruby is already 5, you know. Time for a baby boy. I sigh internally. Here we go again. My in-laws are traditional and always nag me about needing to have a son. While I stand there grimacing, Scarlett seems to remember something. Lillian and the whole family are coming for summer vacation this year. Unlike you, she's a good wife and has given birth to 2 sons. Show her some respect. Lillian is Dylan's sister and my sister-in-law. She lives in Boston with her husband, Stephen, and their 2 sons, Leon and Glenn. They are as self-centered as my in-laws, and I find them hard to get along with. Leon and Glenn are no better. Their lack of manners is apparent. It's rare for Lillian to visit except for Christmas, so it's odd she's coming for the summer. The mere thought of the upcoming vacation gives me a headache, especially considering the friction between Ruby and Lillian's boys. Stephen's a decent guy though, so that's a relief. Fine, I'll prepare their bedding, I say, heading upstairs. Scarlett calls out after me, why not ask Lillian for some tips on how to give birth to a boy? My head heats up at her insensitive comment, and I feel dizzy. I turn back and see Scarlett's unsettling smile. Ignoring her, I go to my room and unlock my phone. The truth is, I have another source of comfort. Messaging with my first cousin, Naya, who's like a sister to me. She's also a housewife and lives in Boston. We vent to each other about our families. We can't chat long because we both live with our in-laws, but these small exchanges are one of my stress relievers. I open WhatsApp to tell her about what just happened with Scarlett, but stop. There's already a new message from Naya. Reading it, I'm shocked. About a month later, Lillian comes to visit for the summer vacation, bringing only her sons, Leon and Glenn. Scarlett tilts her head, puzzled by Lillian's actions. Hey, where's Stephen? She asks. He got caught up with some work. Lillian responds. That's a bummer. Well, make sure you all relax and recharge, Scarlett says. I nodded in agreement. Let's play with water in the yard. Leon and Glenn tossed their bags by the door and dashed outside. Peering out, I saw them turn the garden hose on full blast, splashing water all over the yard. If they keep spraying water like that, it's going to be tough cleaning the walls, and Aaron's cherished potted plants were nearby too. Unperturbed, Leon and Glenn happily splashed water and mudded at each other. Wondering where Ruby was, I glanced around and saw her watching Leon and Glenn's antics from an upstairs room. I'm tired. Housekeeper, where's the food and coffee? You're as slow as ever, Lillian said, sprawling on the sofa after tossing her bag in the living room and cranking up the air conditioner. I silently poured coffee into a cup and set it down with a clatter in front of Lillian. A bit of coffee sloshed out of the hastily placed cup. The room fell silent, perhaps shocked by this uncharacteristic move. Excuse me, do you even know your place? Lillian glared at me, visibly angry. Dylan, who was nearby, looked surprised, and my mother-in-law was also visibly angry. The old me would have apologized immediately, but today was different. Looking down at the seated Lillian, I finally spoke. Small world, isn't it? Your affairs with my first cousin's husband. You're done. Caught off guard by my sudden words, my mother-in-law and Dylan tilted their heads in confusion, but Lillian was visibly shaken, her eyes wide and her face pale. To explain, let's rewind to the day I found out Lillian was going on a summer vacation. I was about to vent to my friend Naya via text when I received a shocking message. I'm getting a divorce. Concerned, I immediately texted back, asking if she was okay. I found out my husband is cheating on me. I'm tired and considering divorce, Naya replied. I could sense a myriad of emotions from her concise message. Can we talk tonight? She texted, and I agreed. That evening, after making sure the family was asleep, I quietly slipped out of the in-laws' house. I unlocked a small shed within the grounds, thinking it would be a good place to talk privately. It was a bit dusty, but that was the least of my concerns. Making calls inside the main house would just cause a ruckus and, worst case, my phone could get confiscated. I texted Naya that I was ready and received a call from her shortly after. Hello. Naya's voice sounded nasal and muffled, likely because she had been crying. Are you okay? I asked. I had heard that Naya was going through a tough time, but I never imagined it would end in divorce due to cheating. As I pondered this, Naya started to speak more calmly. She said there had been signs of cheating, but like me, her self-esteem had been eroded by her husband John and her in-laws to the point that she couldn't say anything. One day, she wasn't feeling well during her daytime part-time job and decided to go home early. Although John and her in-laws were supposed to be out at that time, for some reason John's car and an unfamiliar parasol were at the front door. When she cautiously entered the house, she found John embracing another woman. The other woman didn't even flinch. She was surprised for a moment when she saw Naya, but then she grinned as if she had won. But that wasn't all. Naya continued. Apparently, John's affair partner was my sister-in-law, Lillian. I thought her face looked familiar. When I heard her name from John, I realized she was someone I saw at your wedding, Amelia. At this revelation, I was speechless. I heard that John was pretty infatuated with Lillian and was talking about remarrying her after divorcing Naya. When I heard that, I woke up. What am I doing? Naya said, then added, so, Amelia, how about you and I free ourselves from all this? I was taken aback by her sudden proposition. She explained that we should both divorce and start new lives. Naya's words ended up drastically changing the trajectory of my life, and that brings us to now. Upon hearing my words, Lillian's face turns pale, and she trembles while my in-laws angrily accuse me of making no sense. But when they see Lillian's face, they quickly realize the truth. My in-laws start interrogating Lillian. Naya and I are like sisters. That's why I can't forgive you even more, I tell Lillian. That's why Naya has consulted a lawyer to sue you for damages. Stephen found out about your cheating and fled home, didn't he? My in-laws begin to panic upon hearing lawyer and damages, probably worrying about their social standing and money. Lillian, who had been pale until now, glares at me defiantly. So what? Even if I come back to this house, you'll just be working as a alleged housekeeper, she says. I just smile. That's not possible. I'm divorcing Dylan too, I say and pull out the divorce papers with my signature on them. Dylan, who had been watching all this like it was someone else's problem, suddenly starts frantically switching his gaze between the divorce papers and me. Realizing I was dead serious, Dylan tears up the divorce papers into tiny pieces. What will happen to Ruby? You think you can raise her on your own? Dylan's voice quivers as he speaks, showing a rare glimpse of human emotion that I hadn't seen in a while. Did you forget that I was a working professional before we got married? Actually, I've already got a line on getting back into my old job. Hearing me speak assertively, Dylan looks like a fish out of water, opening and closing his mouth in disbelief. Behind him, Lillian is getting an earful from my mother-in-law while she rambles incoherently. The sounds of Leon and Glenn laughing as they play in the muddy yard fill the air. I pull out a spare set of divorce papers I had prepared for just such a moment. I've also decided to file a claim for damages against you, Dylan and Scarlett. My lawyer will be in touch, so please direct all future communication to them. Dylan stands there in a stupor, as if drained of all life. Naya had already consulted with a lawyer she knew and introduced me to them. I paid the initial fee for my savings from when I was single and agreed to pay the rest from the settlement money. I made time to meet with the lawyer, leveraging moments when I was out for community meetings. The recordings I had of my mother-in-law and Dylan's verbal abuse, along with a detailed diary of what had happened, worked in my favor. The lawyer assured me this is definitely to our advantage. All the caution I had exercised, thinking it might help me one day if I decided to divorce, pay off big time. Hey, don't make decisions without us. Scarlett and the others noticed our conversation and started to confront me all at once. Scarlett, Byron, you've been so kind to me until now. I know the ladies in the community don't like Scarlett, but please do your best to build good relations with the neighbors after I'm gone. Maintaining my smile, I added, and Aaron, maybe cut back on the affairs with young women and work together as a family. You'll need it. I slyly revealed Aaron's affairs while expressing my gratitude for everything. In a way, I truly am grateful to this family. I figured if I could manage with them, I'd be fine wherever I go. Upon hearing me, Scarlett and Lillian both turned their eyes towards Aaron. I had once witnessed Aaron cheating and had kept quiet about it, but now that we are getting divorced and becoming strangers, there is no reason to stay silent. While Scarlett and Lillian turned their eyes towards Aaron, I walked past a stunned Dylan and headed upstairs. With just a few belongings and holding Ruby's small hand, I left the in-laws' house. As I headed to the station, feeling more relieved than I had in years, I ran into a woman known around here for loving gossip. I told her everything, what I had gone through, and what had just happened. 2 months later, my divorce from Dylan was finalized, and Naya's was too. Dylan transferred more money into my account than he was required to, saying it was for my mother-in-law. I'd even received an apology letter from her, but I haven't responded. I have no plans to associate with them anymore. Thanks to the gossip-loving woman, they are now under criticism from the community, labeled as a morally harassing family abandoned by their sons' wives. Moreover, the daughter came back home after cheating. Apparently, my mother-in-law had to sell off their fields to pay me and Naya the settlement money, and I've heard that she is now treating Lillian like a housekeeper. Right now, there's chaos due to Aaron's affair, as I found out through a call from Dylan. I ignored it. It's none of my business anymore. Ruby smiles much more now compared to when we were living with the in-laws. Right now, she's enjoying pancakes with a freshly divorced and cheerful Naya. If it weren't for Naya's intervention, I might never have awakened. From now on, I am living for Ruby's and my own happiness.
This is the end for you. What are you doing? Open this door, please. And what do you mean by the end? I just turned off the breaker downstairs. Now the elevator won't work, and you can't get down from the second floor. What? What are you talking about? I'm heading out on a 7-night, 8-day trip with my friends. The fake mom can starve on the second floor. Hey, stop jerking and open the door. I could open it, but you can't get down to the first floor by yourself. Your smartphone and computer are downstairs, so you can't call for help. Dad's on a business trip and won't be back for 3 months. The situation looks pretty hopeless. My husband's daughter, Emily, really left me, a wheelchair user, stranded on the second floor and went on her trip. This was crossing a line. A week later, when Emily returned home, she felt something was off as she climbed the stairs. Why are you looking so chipper? It seemed Emily couldn't grasp the situation, so I decided to explain it to her. This would probably be my last lesson to her as a mother, so I took my time explaining carefully. My name is Jennifer. I'm a 34-year-old programmer, just a regular person with a job, a marriage, and kids. But there's one thing that sets me apart. I've been wheelchair-bound since a traffic accident in middle school. When the accident happened, I was unconscious for 3 days and bedridden for treatment afterward. When I woke up, I didn't realize for a while that my legs had stopped working. I only knew my legs were paralyzed when my mom broke the news to me. Mom, when will I start rehab? I want to play basketball again soon. If I take it easy, I might lose my spot on the team. Think the doctor will have something to say, but the truth is, I cried all day after hearing the cruel reality from my mom. It must have been hard for her to tell me. She cried with me all day, but my tomboyish, mischievous, and lively nature helped me bounce back quickly. Well, what's done is done. What matters is what comes next. Life in a wheelchair was inconvenient, but not as bad as I had imagined. Over 20 years have passed since the accident, and I've adapted so well to wheelchair life that it surprises people. I still have some upper body strength, so I can manage the bathroom alone if I try. I chose a company understanding of my wheelchair needs and now mainly work from home. I go to the office about 2 or 3 times a month for meetings, commuting by car. I drive myself using a specially adapted vehicle that can be operated solely with my hands, and sometimes I go for drives on weekends. I enjoyed wheelchair basketball in my 20s. There have been challenges, but overall, I'm satisfied with my life, and even managed to get married, something I had given up on because of my disability. Does this setup work for you? Your parents' house seemed more elaborate. That was just my parents going overboard because they weren't sure what I needed. This is enough for me. We just need to install a lift for the stairs. I can't install a lift myself. Guess we'll have to wait for the professionals. I married Kevin, who is 7 years older, just last year. Our meeting wasn't dramatic, just a typical workplace romance. After getting married, Kevin and I rented a house and made it wheelchair accessible with permission. Wheelchair accessible meant simple things like installing portable ramps and handrails. The only major addition was a rail lift for getting to the second floor. And that's how our sweet newlywed life began. Or at least that's what we thought. I'm home, Jennifer. What's for dinner? Weren't you with your mom today? Didn't you eat anything there? She said she had some errand and left early. Oh dear, you should have told me. If you needed dinner, I always say that. Am I sorry about that? My husband Kevin is a divorcee with a child, but his daughter Emily is already an 18-year-old college student. I've known her since before we got married, and we have a good relationship. She calls me Jennifer. Emily also gets along well with Kevin's ex-wife Mindy, meeting her sometimes and distinguishing her as mom. Despite potential issues like my disability or the dynamics with Emily, I felt joy that our family life started without any trouble. But unbeknownst to me, seeds of trouble were growing behind the scenes. A year into our marriage, Emily, who had been friendly, became increasingly distant, now barely conversing. Welcome back. Do you want dinner? No, I don't. Upon returning home, Emily would go straight to her room on the second floor, hardly coming out. It's hard for me to go upstairs without the lift, so my life is centered around the first floor. I only go upstairs about once a month to retrieve clothes or items from the storage room. For Emily, avoiding me, the second floor is a convenient refuge. I have no idea why my daughter has become distant towards me. I've even discussed this with my husband. Did I do something to make Emily dislike me? You can't think of anything, right? No, nothing at all. We were so close before, even when we first moved into this house. She talks to me just like she always has. Why this sudden change? It wasn't sudden. It started about a month after moving in here. Maybe living with me made her upset? Probably not. She's known about your disability since before we married. Kevin and I were at a loss, not understanding why Emily's attitude changed. Without knowing the cause, we couldn't solve it. So I tried talking to her, but it seemed that wasn't the best approach. Oh, you're home early today. I'd only had 2 classes. Wait a moment. I stopped Emily as she was about to go upstairs. What? Emily turned to me with a face somewhere between anger and no expression. I couldn't tell her feelings, but her annoyance was clear. We haven't talked much lately. Is something going on at college, or is it something to do with me? If you're troubled, you can tell me anything. Don't act like a mom. It's annoying. Emily mumbled and went upstairs. I thought I must have misheard. It was hard to believe she would say something so cruel. I convinced myself it was a misunderstanding, trying to ease the shock. That night, I discovered the reason behind Emily's coldness and reported it to Kevin. It seems I'm the cause. She said, don't act like a mom. It's annoying. What? Emily said that. Kevin was furious, leading to a family meeting. After hearing my side of the story, my husband loudly called for our daughter from the bottom of the stairs. Summoned by her father, she came to the living room with a sulky expression and sat down. Emily, I heard you said something awful to Jennifer. Why would you say that? Jennifer, she's not my mom. She's just a fake mom to me. Isn't this how you treat a fake mom? How can you say that? Kevin looked ready to explode. Please, don't yell. I interjected. If my husband lost his temper here, we wouldn't be able to hear our daughter's side and resolve the issue. Suppressing the shock of being called a fake mother, I urged my husband to stay calm. Kevin regained his composure and continued. Why did you suddenly start saying that? You never used to. When I thought about it, it's weird. Dad divorced Mom and remarried within a year. You must have been cheating with Jennifer while still married, right? Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. I've known Jennifer for over 10 years. We worked together. That's why we got married quickly. And about cheating. Dad was always busy with work, leaving Mom lonely. Maybe the divorce was partly your fault too, Dad. Emily, Kevin's a busy software engineer. His work is for the family. I tried to explain. Shut up. It's all your fault. You ruined our lives. My daughter screamed, slamming the table. She stood up quickly and stormed out of the living room. I didn't understand why she would think such a thing, but it seems she believes I stole her father from his ex-wife. I think I kind of understand the reason now. Let's leave it at that for today. Emily seems to be misunderstanding something, so Jennifer, just keep your distance from Emily for now. I'll clear up her misunderstanding. I decided to trust my husband's words and leave it to him. However, despite his attempts to clear up our daughter's misunderstanding, she was no longer willing to listen. Why are you so cold to your mom? How long are you going to stick with that fake mom nonsense? Just get a divorce already. What do you dislike so much? It's her very existence. The fake mom. When my husband talked to our daughter, she would confront me when he wasn't looking. You told Dad to talk to me again, didn't you? Don't get too comfortable just because you have him on your side. That's not true. How can I believe anything from you who stole Dad from Mom? My daughter kicked the laundry I had folded. With my mobility issues, it was a struggle to pick up the clothes that were kicked out of my reach. Knowing this, she deliberately kicked the pile from the bottom to make the clothes fly further. Watching the scattered laundry, she seemed satisfied and went upstairs. While I picked up what I could reach, my husband would scold our daughter, who would then take it out on me. This pattern had become the routine. To resolve my daughter's misunderstanding, we needed to keep talking, so this cycle would likely continue. However, just when I was preparing to keep dealing with my daughter patiently, my husband's long business trip was unfortunately scheduled. I'm sorry to leave you two alone while this is still unresolved. It's work, so it can't be helped. Maybe the company thinks it's okay because I'm too tough. Maybe I should be the one apologizing to you. It's okay if resolving things with Emily gets pushed back 2 or 3 months. I sent my husband off with a smile, not wanting to worry him more than necessary. Honestly, I felt uneasy about being alone with my daughter for 3 months, but there hadn't been any physical violence, so I shouldn't be overly anxious. That's what I thought. But my daughter's behavior escalated quickly once my husband was out of the house. 3 days after he left for his business trip. Why is the picnic blanket here? Maybe Emily was using it, but she seemed to have left earlier. Decided it was okay to tidy up the picnic blanket and took it to the storage room upstairs. As I went upstairs, I heard the front door open. Is Emily back already? Curious about my daughter, but continuing to the storage room. Placed the picnic blanket inside. Suddenly, the door to the storage room slammed shut. This is the end for you. What are you doing? Open this door. It seemed I had fallen into my daughter's trap. She was holding the door from the outside, and I couldn't budge it from my wheelchair. However, the storage room door didn't have a lock. She couldn't keep holding it forever. So what did she mean by the end for me? Do you want me to open it? I'll open it soon. But first, just listen to me. I don't want to see your face, and you move surprisingly quickly for someone in a wheelchair. She locked me in the storage room to avoid any retaliation from me. Indeed, being physically trained in basketball, I can understand her caution. But apart from that, her decision wasn't very wise. Do you think I'm going to hit you? And what do you mean by the end? Just turned off the breaker downstairs. Now the elevator won't work, and you can't get down from the 2nd floor. What? What are you talking about? I'm going on a 7-night, 8-day trip with my friends. So I'll help you in a week. Starve on the 2nd floor. Fake mom. Hey, stop joking. Open the door. I can open it, But you can't get down to the first floor alone. Your smartphone and computer are downstairs, so you can't call for help. And Dad's on a business trip and won't be back for 3 months. The situation looks pretty hopeless. Why are you doing something so terrible? Because you stole Dad from Mom. Just get a divorce already. Then Mom can remarry Dad. She even broke up with her boyfriend thinking Dad would come back to her. If she knew about Mom's feelings, Kevin would never remarry Mindy. What do you know? Good luck surviving. The sound of hurried footsteps faded away. Emily must have run out of the house. When I opened the door of the storage room, no one was there. I stepped into the hallway and headed towards the stairs. Passing by Emily's room, I noticed a board about 8 inches high fixed at the bottom of her door. It was made so the door could be opened, but I couldn't enter the room in my wheelchair. Emily had found a clever way to trap me on the second floor while also maintaining her privacy. Reaching the stairs, I found a few pieces of bread and a bottle of water on the floor, likely a precaution to ensure I didn't starve to death. However, while I could drink tap water for hydration, the bread was clearly not enough for a week. Her intent to starve me seemed serious. This had crossed a line. I resolved to teach Emily and whoever orchestrated this situation a harsh lesson. A week later, Emily returned from her trip. I secretly observed her taking off her shoes at the entrance. Hiding at the back of the room, she stepped into the house and started looking around, sensing something different about the house today. The stair lift was on the first floor, and there were unusual shoes at the entrance. However, my daughter, seemingly oblivious, felt something was off but couldn't quite put her finger on it. As usual, she quickly went upstairs, unaware of the exact cause of her unease. I followed her, and halfway up the stairs, I heard her loud voice. "Why are you here?" "Shall I explain?" "What? How come you're looking so well?" Emily was surprised to see me peeking from the storage room and even more startled when I spoke from behind her. My daughter, in a state of constant surprise and confusion, widened her eyes and stared at me, desperately trying to make sense of the situation. "You're not starving at all." "Of course I'm not. You might have thought you trapped me on the second floor, but that wasn't really a trap." "But wasn't the stair lift supposed to be unusable?" "The lift is battery powered, so it works even when the breaker is off. It's a standard feature for power outage situations." Then, yes, right after you left for your trip, I went downstairs using the lift. Even if it hadn't worked, I could have asked for help from a window. As for the breaker, I usually use a stick to reset it, so no issues there. And thanks for the bread, by the way. It made a nice snack. Emily had grown cold towards me about a month after moving in. Because she reduced her interactions with me early on, she never fully understood the extent of my mobility limitations. Even after living together for a year, she didn't fully grasp how the stair lift worked. Right after she left for her trip, I went downstairs as usual and immediately called Kevin to report what had happened. When Emily learned that I wasn't starving, she quickly looked towards the storage room and pointed to a person sitting there in shock, shouting, "Why is Mom here? And why is she sitting like that? What are you up to?" "I'll explain that." My husband had been standing right next to the storage room door all this time, but Emily was too shocked by the sight of her mother and me to notice him. So she yelled out in surprise again, "Dad, why are you here? Aren't you on a business trip?" "Huh, it's not an overseas trip. It's Sunday, and I'm off work, so it's not strange for me to be home," he replied. Emily's naive question seemed to perplex my husband. At 19, and with only part-time job experience, she had assumed that a long-term business trip meant he couldn't come home often. However, his business trip was just a 3-hour drive away, and he planned to return home every 2 weeks. Today, a bit earlier than scheduled, he came back due to the situation with Emily. I heard from your mother about the nonsense you've been up to in telling me to divorce. Yes, it's all because of this fake mom. If she wasn't here, Mom and Dad could remarry. I'm never getting a divorce, and I won't remarry Mindy. Why not? The reason for the divorce might be Mom's affair. But wasn't it also because you were always working? Besides, Mom can't forget you. She's repented and left her affair partner, waiting for you. Hearing Emily's words, my husband and I sighed. Mindy, unable to bear the tension, bowed her head, staring at the floor. Mindy, explain it yourself. That's why I brought you here. Yes, the affair was not because of your work. It was just me enjoying playing around with men. Mindy confessed. Lies, right? You said the affair was because of Dad's work and that you left the other man because you couldn't forget Dad. It's not like that. I was dumped again because of my infidelity. I've always had a low income from part-time jobs. Over 40 now. I can't find a new job or catch a new man. Struggling for money. I thought of getting help from Kevin again, but then I heard he remarried. So you said Emily lies about me having an affair with Jennifer even before the divorce, trying to disrupt our life and set the stage for a divorce. Yes, that's true. When Emily locked me upstairs, Mindy had mentioned wanting to remarry Kevin. So, after hearing from me, Kevin immediately contacted Mindy. Upon confronting her, it became clear she had been manipulating Emily. The quickest way to clear Emily's misconception that I stole Kevin from Mindy was to let her hear the truth from Mindy herself. Therefore, Kevin arranged for Mindy to be at the house when Emily returned from her trip. What? So I was deceived by Mom? It seemed as if Mindy was the mastermind and Emily a victim. But even if deceived, Emily had crossed a clear line, so Kevin prepared to take a firm stand. Mindy is at fault for deceiving Emily, but you're also wrong. You went too far. Don't come back to this house. What do you mean I was deceived? Emily's voice was indignant ***. Even if you were deceived, you tried to starve your mother by locking her upstairs. If the lift hadn't worked, you could have been arrested for unlawful confinement. But I didn't know about the lift. It's not fair. You can't just kick me out. I'm only 19. Kevin's expression was stern. In the eyes of the law, you're an adult at 18. Parental rights have already ended. You're not a child who can be indulged anymore. What do you mean? I'm still a student and can't do anything, and yet I'm considered an adult. That's the law. If you have a complaint, take it up with the government. We'll pay for your college tuition until you graduate, but you need to figure out your own living arrangements and expenses. Emily's eyes filled with desperation. That's impossible. Hey, I can go live with Mom, right? She'll take care of me, won't she? Mindy shook her head. I can't. I'm struggling financially and tried to use you to get help. I can't possibly take care of you. Emily's face turned red with frustration. Regardless of what the law says, I'm still a child. Parents should take responsibility. Make up for deceiving me. Rejected by Kevin, Emily had no choice but to turn to her mother, Mindy, who was living in tight circumstances. Knowing her lack of options, Emily had to rely on Mindy. I can at least stay in the house, right? Emily's voice wavered. If you move in, I'll end up having to take care of your living expenses. Mindy replied, I can see where this is going. I'm not like you. No, you're the same as me. You're my daughter after all. An ugly, self-deprecating argument unfolded before us. I wish they would stop fighting in someone else's home. Excuse me, can you take this discussion elsewhere? Emily and Mindy left the house without a word. It felt a bit pitiful, but Kevin was right. Emily was no longer a child. She might have endangered my life if things had gone differently. Making her realize the gravity of her actions is also a parent's duty. I watched her leave, hoping for her growth in the future. In the end, Emily moved in with Mindy. Mindy was living in a cramped, cheap apartment due to her financial situation. Emily moving in meant a cramped life with no privacy. Mindy told Emily to contribute to some of the living expenses like rent and utilities. Since Kevin wouldn't provide anything other than tuition, Emily had to pay these expenses from her part-time job earnings. But as a student, she couldn't always work. Most of her earnings went to living expenses, leaving her no money to hang out with friends. It must be tough for her at an age when socializing is everything. She might even lose friends due to being seen as unsociable. Well, she should accept this as a consequence of her actions. Mindy's life became a bit easier now that she received some financial help from Emily. But instead of getting a full-time job, she continued working part-time. Emily, frustrated by the lack of money, often argued with her, "You should get a full-time job, not just part-time. You're planning not to pay living expenses once my income increases, aren't you?" They often had these kinds of arguments about money. Kevin seems open to supporting Emily as she shows remorse, but that appears to be a ways off. With Emily gone, our life as a couple has begun. Though we've been married for over a year, it feels like we're newlyweds again. We're enjoying our time together, finding peace and joy in each other's company after the tumultuous year we've had. My husband Dave will inherit the house, the $3 million, and the director position. Upon hearing that a lawyer was present for Tosha's inheritance proceedings, Lily couldn't hide her joy. She entered the living room as if she owned the place. Lily, who had always been pressing with questions like, "What's happening with the inheritance?" or "Is it not done yet?" must have been eagerly awaiting this day. Ignoring me, she approached the lawyer sitting in front of her. The old me would have surely raised my voice in warning as Lily turned her back to me. I couldn't stop being excited to see what she'd say next. Her greedy remarks exceeded my expectations, and I laughed out loud, holding my stomach. Combined with the stunned look on the lawyer's face, I continued to laugh at Lily's audacity. Of course, Lily, who didn't find the situation funny, gave me a cold look. "Do you really think that you'll get your father-in-law's inheritance?" I chuckled at her obsession with money and her over-the-top attitude. Pointing to the late-arriving Dave, she raised her voice. "The right to inherit belongs to my husband Dave." I took a deep breath, ready to enlighten her with the truth. "My name is Kelly. I am 65 years old this year. I've been a full-time housewife, supporting my doctor husband Tosh for a long time. Even after becoming a director, he always said never to tire and kept working. Dave grew up watching his father and decided to follow the same path. I believed it was a happy and fulfilling life for my husband as well. However, my husband left this world at the age of 68. He was deeply passionate about his work, truly believing that being a doctor was his calling. Perhaps his sudden death was due to overworking, but at his funeral, the scene made me feel that he lived a life with no regrets. Not just his superiors and colleagues, but also subordinates and others came to the funeral. The venue was packed with people mourning him. It wasn't just medical professionals who attended. I received many condolences from patients he had treated in the past. I didn't know exactly how he worked as I only saw the Tosh who went to and from his job every day. But realizing how much he was loved, I felt assured that he had done the right things in his life. Amidst the somber funeral, Lily, the eldest son's wife, was restless, seemingly out of place. Her face relaxed almost as if she was rejoicing in her father-in-law's death. My suspicions were confirmed when I overheard her talking with relatives. My father-in-law was always working. I think he might have saved quite a lot since he probably didn't have much time to spend money. Hearing such a statement right behind me, I couldn't believe my ears. Despite being in the middle of a funeral, it seemed that Lily was fidgeting, thinking about how her father-in-law's inheritance would be distributed. Perhaps she doesn't know that a daughter-in-law might not have any inheritance rights. Even so, I felt uncomfortable with her behavior, which wasn't appropriate for the funeral. Seeing her behavior, Dave, the eldest son, apologized to me with a guilty look. Mom, I'm truly sorry. No matter how many times I tell her, Lily doesn't listen. It's not your fault, Dave. But if you feel that way, can you please firmly warn her? Many people are attending this event. I knew about Lily's behavior even before Dave mentioned it, remembering her inexcusable attitude. I saw it all while I was busy with my husband's funeral preparations. Lily came to the house, but she didn't help at all. She didn't offer any words of comfort or sympathy. Instead, she constantly talked about money, asking things like, "Your husband had quite an inheritance, right? How much was it? Even if you're his wife, it's his inheritance, so don't waste it, okay?" I couldn't believe her audacity. Did you come here just to say that? Is that all you have to say? Well, yeah. If you squander it just because you don't have long to live, I'll be in trouble, she retorted. Anger and disbelief washed over me as Lily spoke as if my late husband's assets belonged to her. She always looked down on me and was sarcastic towards me. I don't know why she dislikes me so much, but her comments about other people's assets have often left me disheartened. My son Dave was inspired by his father and became a doctor. Dave's earnings are not bad, but Lily has always been overly obsessed with money. She'd often call me saying things like, "I'm worried about our future with Dave's low income," or "We're short on money," hinting at wanting financial help. Because of this, getting along with her was quite challenging. I used to let things slide, but this time she's targeting my husband's inheritance, and I've reached my limit. Dave's income is really unstable, so we don't have much money to spend freely. We can't afford luxuries. I explained. Oh, really? Why don't you work then? That would help with the household expenses, and you could afford some luxuries, couldn't you? She snapped back. What? It's ridiculous for a doctor's wife to work. You're lucky since your husband earned well, and you could live comfortably. No matter how many times I tried to advise her, her attitude only worsened, and our verbal exchanges became increasingly heated. She wouldn't even hesitate to belittle her own husband, Dave, seemingly just to look down on me. From her perspective, I'm her mother-in-law. But once married, we're family. I couldn't stand the way she treated family members with such disrespect. Thanks to my husband, I've been able to live comfortably. If you desire the same, maybe you should respect and support your husband a bit more, I said. If there was something about Dave to respect, then maybe. Anyway, I'm off to get my nails done and have a spa day. Don't forget about the inheritance, okay? Bye now, she said, and promptly left the house. Given her stormy behavior, I began to wonder how Dave was treated at home. But her self-centered actions didn't end there. During the inheritance proceedings, she continued her intolerable behavior. Even after the funeral was over, every time she visited, she'd greet me with, "How's the inheritance coming along?" It felt like a standard greeting. Despite explaining several times that the process takes time, she either forgot or didn't understand and constantly pressured me whenever she saw me. I've informed her multiple times that she has no rights regarding the inheritance, but she just doesn't seem to get it. Whether she believes Dave's money is hers or has some other scheme in mind, she seems to be convinced she'll inherit a fortune. After discussing with Dave, or rather manipulating the conversation to her advantage, she probably intends to get a share of the inheritance. If that was all, being Dave's family matter, I shouldn't interfere. However, Lily tried to steal valuable things from our house. "Lily, what are you doing?" "That's my necklace." "Oh, come on. Don't be so stinky. We're family, so it's okay, right?" I can't be friends with someone who would steal from me. Fine then, I'll take it as an advance on the inheritance. That's okay, right? I'm being patient here. No matter how many times I told her not to act so arbitrarily, she wouldn't listen to me. From the moment she took my cherished necklace that my husband had gifted me, I couldn't stand it. After that, I never opened the door for her again, even though Dave frequently messaged saying, "Mom, I'm truly sorry for Lily." He couldn't stop her. I gave up expecting anything from Dave or Lily. I didn't even have time to grieve the loss of the necklace my husband gifted me as her malicious harassment continued. She seemingly bad-mouthed me to her friends and others, calling me the worst mother-in-law who won't even let her in the house. The neighbors would say, "It looks tough," with a wry smile, but they showed a concern. I don't understand why she hates me so much. It gives me a headache. What hurt the most was a letter I found in our mailbox. I felt disgusted just by seeing the already opened envelope, and upon checking its contents, it was addressed to Dave and his wife. Whether it's Lily's idea of harassment because I won't let her in or something else, her credit card bill was in our mailbox. Seeing the statement filled with extravagant expenses from luxury restaurants and online shopping made my blood run cold. "Dave, there's a credit card bill for Lily in our mailbox. It was already opened and checked. What's the meaning of this?" "Huh? I have no idea. It seems like she has spent a lot. She always talks about her income to me. Is everything okay?" "Well, it's actually tough. Mom, I'm sorry to ask, but could you pay it for us?" Wanting to complain, I contacted Dave. However, whether under Lily's influence or due to the power dynamics in his household, he said something unbelievable, leaving me speechless. I wondered why I needed to help them. Why would he even think I'd assist them? He can't even retrieve the cherished necklace from his wife. What is he even saying? I harshly criticized his behavior, which seemed to remember only things convenient for him. "I've already done my part in supporting you as a parent. Why would an adult like you burden their parent and ask for help? Well, we have Dad's inheritance, right? You won't be able to use it all by yourself. Please, I thought you'd help. There's a saying about a thief acting brazenly after committing theft, and now I get it. Dave, you two are really a match made in heaven. I'm cutting ties. Stay away from me." I could tell from the other end of the phone that he wasn't taking what I was saying seriously. I was so furious with his attitude. After hanging up, I immediately threw the bill into the trash. The idea that Lily might have deliberately put it in our mailbox assuming I'd pay was unbelievable. Most of all, it's an inconceivable act and makes me question her as a person. I think you assume I haven't thought about it, but is there really a way to get the inheritance, Tosh? What should I do? Looking at my husband's photo, I picked it up and unconsciously asked that question. From my anger and disappointment towards Dave and Lily, I've lost understanding of how to handle my emotions. Is it really okay to proceed with the inheritance as it is? Amidst my insecurities, I somehow mustered up courage. I hope someday they get what they deserve. Frustrated by their appalling behavior, I dealt with the inheritance proceedings alone. Perhaps my feelings got through, as I found out my husband had left a will, and in it, something was written. After reading the will my husband left behind, I resolved to get back at them to protect myself. Phew! I'm glad. It seems Tosh was on my side after all. Thank you. Holding back tears and pressing the will to my chest, I regained my composure. I clenched my fists, deciding I wouldn't just do nothing and let those two dictate things. I decided to wait for the right moment to make a big move against them. Maybe because I felt relieved at the thought of being able to retaliate for all the suffering, I completely forgot about the bill from Lily. I would have thrown it away from the start, not intending to pay, but she must have received a reminder. This time I received a message from her. Even though I told her that the inheritance proceedings were not yet completed, there were false accusations that I alone wanted to control everything. This was followed by words that seemed to attack me. It's because you haven't settled the inheritance yet. I'll wait a little longer, but please do it as soon as possible. Oh, by the way, you saw the bill I left in the mailbox, right? Please make that payment. What are you talking about? Stop joking. Why do you think you're entitled to the inheritance? Oh, come on. Dave is the eldest son, right? It's only natural for him to get an inheritance, isn't it? Do they think I know nothing? Lily scoffed and said with a smirk, Dave has a right to inherit because he's the eldest son. In general, this is not incorrect. Even after Lily said all this, I still haven't told them the important thing. Even if I don't tell them, it's their own problem and they should naturally know about it. But for them, who can only think conveniently, it might be hard to realize. I'm waiting for the perfect moment when they fall apart, watching for the right timing. And finally, that time came. It was when I explained the situation to the lawyer and after the proceedings were finished that, with his cooperation, I finalized the plan. I decided to contact Dave once the procedure was complete. To me, it was just routine communication, but as expected, Lily came to my house with a face filled with joy. I deliberately left the front door unlocked. Without any suspicion, she opened the door and stomped in. Seeing her, I could hardly hold back my laughter. I've been waiting for so long. Isn't it terrible how reluctant you've been to complete the procedure and won't give up the inheritance? Oh, Lily, what brings you here? Is this gentleman the lawyer? I am Lily, Dave's wife. Ignoring me completely, she headed straight to the lawyer sitting in front of me. Normally, I would reprimand her for such rude behavior, but this time, I held back and waited. She turned her back on me and approached the lawyer, and I was even excited to hear what she would say next. Finally, we will inherit this house, $3 million, and the director's position because Dave is the eldest son. Her greedy remark was more than I expected, and I laughed out loud, holding my stomach. The audacity of her and the lawyer's stunned face made it even funnier, and I kept laughing out loud. Of course, Lily, who didn't find the situation amusing, glared at me coldly. Hey, what's so funny? Are you upset that we are taking the inheritance? No, why, $3 million. How did you come up with that amount? Come on, your husband worked as a doctor for a long time, right? He probably didn't have time to spend money. It's obvious that there's that much money. Unless, have you already used it? I genuinely laughed at her obsession with money. Whatever I choose to do with my inheritance is my business, and she has no right to complain. However, it seems that she doesn't find the idea of me inheriting amusing. Hello, how many times have I told you? Since you don't have much longer to live, don't do anything reckless, even if you're related by marriage. It's quite something to say that to me, your elder. Wasn't I the one telling you that you have no right to inherit Lily? Wearing the necklace she stole from me, Lily glared at me sharply. I had no intention of letting her take anything more precious from me. I made up my mind not to lose to her, who is self-centered, greedy, and obsessed with money, and clenched my fist. Pointing to the late arriving Dave, Lily exclaimed loudly, "The right to inherit belongs to my husband Dave." Taking a deep breath, I decided to tell them the truth. You see, there shouldn't be any inheritance for you two to claim. Dave, isn't that right? Huh? Why, Mom? What do you mean? Oh, don't you have any idea? Aren't you forgetting something? Wait, are you talking about that issue? It was resolved a long time ago, wasn't it? Duh. What are you even talking about? Truly disappointing. What have you made amends for? What's resolved? Don't talk nonsense. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? I was taken aback by her demeanor as if she had completely forgotten or knew nothing about the issue. Even though it was a situation she caused, it seemed she couldn't remember it. I decided to explain the situation in detail for them to understand. Dave had married Lily a few years back. However, just a little while before that, he was already married to another woman and had built a family with her. Despite having a child, he neglected his family to have an affair with Lily. The two eventually got married after their affair. The truth came out when Dave came begging Tosh, unable to pay the alimony and child support on his own. Dave, what were you thinking? I never thought you would stoop this low. I had no other choice if I wanted to marry Lily. What are you saying? You're the one who committed the wrongdoing. Even if you are my son, don't expect me to pay for your mistakes. Dave, take responsibility and sort it out. Why? You can help me a bit. As a doctor, you are constantly working and don't have time to spend money, so you must have some to spare, right? Dave's audacious remark pushed my husband's anger to its peak. When Dave started making excuses about being overwhelmed with newlywed life and needing money for their wedding, my husband decided to cast aside his feelings as a parent and chose his grandchild instead. Fine, I'll pay on your behalf. There's no need for my grandchild to suffer because of a terrible father like you. Dad, don't say it in such a sarcastic way. I'm your son, you know. Exactly, that's the point. And in exchange, I won't support you in any way from now on. And of course, don't expect to inherit a single thing from me. Dave probably thought that my husband's words were just declarations made in the heat of the moment. But my husband, believing that someone who abandons their family doesn't deserve to be celebrated, neither attended the wedding nor offered any support. Dad, just let it go. In the future, you'll rely on us for care, right? We are family, so try to compromise a bit. No way. Why would I bother with someone like you? Knowing that his parent had money, Dave had previously mentioned the need for future care and had requested support. As Lily's face twisted in confusion and anger, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The moment I'd been waiting for had finally arrived. My husband didn't listen to Dave's words, and as he declared, he made sure it was written in his will, clearly stating that everything should go to his wife and grandchild. My husband, with a classical and strict personality, had meticulously prepared not to give even a small amount of money to Dave and his wife. The fact was known when my husband's lawyer showed the will during the funeral procedure. He said he had received the will from my husband in advance. Remembering the anger at that time brings up emotions, but I deeply thanked my husband for leaving the will. Upon hearing the contents of the will left by my husband, as read by the lawyer, Dave and his wife were astounded. I spoke to Lily in a way that added insult to injury. Oh, by the way, Lily, you took stuff from our house, right? You said it was like an advance on the inheritance. Ah, but you understood the contents of the will, the lawyer read, right? You have no rights. So, of course, give it back. It was a gift from my husband to me. I pointed to the necklace she conveniently wore that day and said so. She threw the necklace at me with a visibly discontented attitude. Probably because there was a lawyer present, she couldn't say anything reckless. I didn't hear about this. I thought I'd finally get my father-in-law's inheritance. I came all the way here today. What's going on? Huh, really? When you announced your marriage, you said being plundered means you were more attractive. So it's inevitable, right? You knew what you were getting into when you got with him, who already had a family. I remembered how furious I was at her attitude at the time. I used to think Dave was deceived by such a terrible woman, but now I realize they are a perfectly matched couple. I will definitely inherit. Oh, there is a hospital. It wouldn't be troublesome if the director was absent, right? This kind of succession is usually done by the son. Oh, too bad. It's already been handed over to a competent subordinate. Huh. Why isn't it normal for the son to take over? Haha. To begin with, you're doing something that's not normal, right? It's your own doing. Realize that you're not the norm. She was desperate for the inheritance, whether it be the hospital or the house. In the end, she clung to the lawyer, asking, "Then what can I get?" But the lawyer my husband had contracted wouldn't easily tell her. He repeatedly explained the contents of the will, stating, "The two of you have no inheritance rights," and responded calmly, "This is unbelievable. I don't believe it. It must be a mistake. Really, no matter how much you fuss, nothing will change. Even if you sue, you'll just end up embarrassed. If you're okay with that, feel free to do so." Perhaps finding my cold treatment unbearable, she stormed out of the house with a face as red as a boiled octopus. Watching her leave with Dave, I held the necklace and quietly pumped my fists in triumph. After that, she never contacted me or visited the house again, and the inheritance procedures were completed smoothly. I was worried that they would confront the ex-wife who has a grandchild, but Dave, who doesn't even pay child support, wouldn't know her contact details, so there seemed to be no issues. And Dave and Lily, who didn't get any inheritance, seemed to be having a big quarrel. She told Dave, "I married you thinking I would get a big inheritance from your father," and they're apparently on the brink of divorce. There's a saying, "End of money, end of love," which fits them perfectly. I only received a contact once from Dave saying, "Give me the money or house you inherited," but I naturally ignored it. I exclaimed, "Don't talk nonsense while you're awake," and hung up the phone. I sighed, wondering where I went wrong raising my son. But there was also good news. A letter arrived from Dave's ex-wife stating that the inheritance procedures were completed. In it, along with an update, there was a photo of my cute grandchild and words of gratitude. "Thank you for being such wonderful grandparents," it says. "They're living very happily now." The grandchild my husband had been concerned about until the end is growing up healthy and living happily with her new father. There was also a lovely family photo in the letter, and although I felt guilt as a parent, my mood was brightened and my heart warmed. I was very happy and immediately read the letter in front of my husband's altar to report to him. I was continuously disappointed by Dave's actions and words. However, I was able to report to my husband about the grandchild, which always brought a smile to his face, and I was happy and satisfied. "Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm 54 years old, and this last year has been very hard for me and my daughter-in-law. But before I get into that, let me tell you a bit about my son, Ethan. Ethan is my only child. When he was born, my husband and I were struggling to start our business. We wanted a family but decided to have just one child so we could give him all our attention. We worked hard all day to provide for Ethan, and when we came home, we spent all our time with him. It was tiring at first, but seeing Ethan happy made it worth it. As Ethan grew up, he became a smart and handsome young man. Even when he went to college, he still spent a lot of time with us. However, with his good looks, Ethan started becoming a bit of a player. My husband and I were okay with it as long as he stayed safe and made good decisions. Ethan had one serious girlfriend in his junior year of college, but they broke up because I found out he was talking to another girl. They were planning to move in together after graduation, but I convinced him to break up with her since he wasn't in love if he was already interested in others. My husband and I started to worry about the kind of person Ethan was becoming, so we tried to guide him. Things seemed to improve when he met Valerie, my daughter-in-law. They met through mutual friends and hit it off right away. I adored Valerie from the moment Ethan brought her home. She felt like the daughter I never had. Ethan and Valerie dated for about 3 years before getting married. I thought everything was going perfectly, and my worries about Ethan's behavior faded. To make things even better, less than a year after they married, Valerie announced she was pregnant. I was thrilled about becoming a grandmother, especially since my husband and I were now successful and didn't have the stress of running our business. After Valerie's pregnancy announcement, she stopped coming over as often. My husband and I used to host Ethan and Valerie for dinner regularly, but that changed. Concerned, I asked Ethan about Valerie the next time he came over. Hi, Mom. How are you? Hi, sweetie. I'm good. How are you and Valerie doing? We're good. Where's Valerie? Why didn't she come with you? Well, you know how pregnancy is. Oh no, does she need help with anything? I'm free to help her with anything she needs. No, it's okay. I've reduced my work hours to help her around the house. Sure, but more help never hurts. As a woman who's been through pregnancy, I can offer advice and help. It's really okay, Mom. I've got it under control. Are you sure? Yeah, I'll call you if we ever need anything. Yes, you absolutely should. Speaking of calling, I should call Valerie more often. No, Mom, I was trying to be gentle, but Valerie has been asking for some space. What do you mean? She's feeling a little smothered by all the attention and advice she's been getting from her side of the family. She told me to make sure that no one bothers her right now. Oh, that's odd. I thought so too, but it's probably just her hormones or something. Anyway, I just want to make this pregnancy as comfortable as possible for her, and if that means telling everyone to give her space, then I'm doing that. Okay, I got it. I'll keep my distance, but I'll call you for updates if that's okay. Of course, that's fine. You're doing a great job. By the way, I'm sure Valerie is having a much easier time with you by her side. I really hope she is. Anyway, let's go out and get dinner now. I thought Ethan's reasoning was odd, but I didn't think much about it. Who was I to interfere in his relationship? I wanted to call Valerie, but I chose to honor her wishes. I remembered how crazy pregnancy made me. I was a monster when I was pregnant with Ethan. I figured I'd wait for Valerie to call me when she wanted, and in the meantime, I'd help Ethan take care of her whenever I could. After that, Ethan rarely called. He always seemed so busy with his new job working for Valerie's dad, one of the most successful businessmen in our state. I was glad Ethan's career was taking off, especially with a baby on the way. I assumed he was also taking good care of Valerie, so I didn't bother him much either. With less on my plate, I struggled to keep myself occupied, so I reconnected with old friends. After planning for a few weeks, we finally agreed to meet at a local cafe. Initially, I was having a great time, but then I saw a familiar head. Even from the back, I knew it was Ethan. Before I could go greet him, I noticed who he was with. He was sitting with another woman, younger than him with a toddler by her side. They were holding hands and laughing. I left the cafe without him noticing me. Deep down, I knew it was Ethan, but I needed to confirm it. It was him, and he was with another woman. Something felt off. Ethan told me not to call Valerie, but I couldn't ignore my gut feeling. Eventually, I gave in and called her. Hey, Rachel. Hi, darling. How are you doing? It's funny you're asking me that when I should be asking you. How are you? I'm great. Thank God. You're all right. Of course. Why? Ethan said you'd had a stroke. No, I didn't. Are you sure he said that? I would remember it if I had a life-threatening issue. Ethan's been so sad and upset, saying he's been busy taking care of you. Haven't seen Ethan in weeks. I'm completely fine and healthy, I promise. Then where has he been going? Actually, that's why I'm calling. I saw Ethan this morning at a cafe with a woman and a toddler. But he told me he was working today. He's been lying about a lot of things. Do you think he's cheating on you? I don't know. I don't have any evidence. Were they close? Did the child look like him? They were holding hands and laughing, but the child didn't look like him from what I could tell. Why would he lie to me? Sweetie, you need to stay strong. You have a child on the way. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Go through his things. Isn't that an invasion of his privacy? That doesn't matter when your marriage is on the line. He's probably not home much, right? I think he'll be home soon. Whenever he leaves next, go through his things and let me know if you find anything. No matter what, I'll be by your side. I'll help you, and we'll make sure Ethan pays if he's done anything wrong. Thank you so much, Rachel. I really owe you one. No, you deserve better. Take care and keep me updated. I couldn't believe what I had heard. For Ethan to tell Valerie I had a stroke was beyond insane. I saw no reason for him to lie about something so serious, unless he actually was cheating. I didn't want to assume the worst of my son, but I couldn't rule out the possibility. I had hoped that after he married Valerie, his player days were behind him. But after seeing him look so affectionate with another woman while his wife was pregnant at home, I couldn't help but doubt his actions. The more I thought about Ethan cheating on Valerie, the more upset I got. Valerie was pregnant, and this was not the best time for such life-shattering news. But I would feel guilty if I didn't tell her immediately. It was better for her to go through the pain now rather than after the baby was born. I didn't call Valerie after our conversation because I didn't want Ethan to find out we were talking. I waited patiently for her call, even though it was eating me up inside. Finally, she called me 2 days later. She sounded like she had been crying for a long time. Her voice was raw. Hey, Rachel. Are you free? I hope I'm not bothering you. Oh my gosh, are you okay? Of course I'm free, and you could never be a bother. What's going on? I looked through Ethan's phone and found out so much. Oh no, what did you find out? I found him texting multiple women. Oh, sweetie, that's not even the worst part. It turns out the woman he's been visiting for months is pregnant with his child. I feel so disgusted. I can't imagine how you must feel. But you need to channel all these negative feelings into teaching him a lesson. Yeah, but can I ask you something? Of course, sweetie. Do you think I'm ugly? Do you think there was something I could have done to make sure Ethan remained faithful? Sweetie, you can't think that way. You're not ugly at all. The first time I saw you, I thought my son must have done something incredible to be with you. You are not responsible for his actions. You don't have to fight to keep your husband faithful. That was his duty the second he vowed to be by your side forever. You're right. I guess my pregnant brain is making me feel like I did something wrong. And we can't let your pregnancy brain take over now. We're going to get even with Ethan for hurting you this way. Are you sure you want to go against your son? No son of mine would ever lie to and cheat on his wife. This is about teaching him a much-deserved lesson. All right, let's do this. Shall I come over tomorrow when Ethan is out of the house again? Yes. Take care until then. If you want to stay here for the night, that's okay too. No, I'd much rather surprise Ethan. I don't want him to know we're onto his lies. All right, I'll meet you tomorrow. After the call, I didn't know how to feel. I had so many emotions swirling inside me. I wanted to yell at Ethan for his disgusting behavior, but I also wanted to cry with Valerie for the love she lost. One thing was certain. I knew at that moment I no longer had a son. My husband was also very upset by what Ethan had done and called Valerie to apologize. Valerie was surprisingly kind-hearted about it, which only made me angrier at Ethan. How could he throw away a 4-year relationship with the kindest, most caring woman on the planet, especially when she was pregnant with his child? I wanted nothing more than to call Ethan and yell at him for being a jerk, but I knew better. He needed to learn a lesson, and I was determined to make sure he did. After barely getting any sleep, I went to Valerie's place the next morning. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she looked like a mess. I hugged her tightly and asked how she was holding up. How are you holding up? Well, I've managed to stop crying, so that's where I am right now. I'm really sorry for Ethan's behavior. I feel terrible that this is happening to you. It's okay to feel bad about all of this, But you have nothing to apologize for. You're right. I just sometimes wonder if Ethan's dad and I raised him better. That's nonsense. You guys are wonderful people, and I'm sure you raised Ethan to be just like you. Ethan made his own decisions, and that is not a reflection on you two. You're absolutely right, but still, let me help you figure out how to get back at Ethan. I think I already have an idea. Oh, let me hear it. I was thinking of informing my dad about Ethan cheating on me. I'm sure with all the time he's been sleeping around, he's been slacking at work. Dad probably only lets him work there because Ethan is my husband and needs the money since I'm pregnant. That's brilliant. Your dad can fire him and you can file for a divorce. But will your dad just believe you blindly? Of course, but he won't have to blindly believe me because I have all the proof I need of Ethan's cheating. That's my girl. That's so smart of you. And what about the woman Ethan got pregnant? Does she know he's married? From what I could tell, she didn't. Then I think it's time you tell her. Confront her with all the evidence and see what she says. Do you really think that will go well? Even if it doesn't, at least the woman will be informed. And if it does go well, it will be horrific for Ethan. Either way, it's a win. You're right. I'll talk to my dad about this. Oh, and I'll ask him to make it as embarrassing, and I also think that you should go a step further and expose Ethan to everyone in the family. I'll help, of course. We'll make sure that no one will help him out. Do you think that's overkill? No, he is not allowed to cheat on his wife, lie to her and me, and then get away with it. This is a harsh lesson he needs to learn. All right, then thank you so much for helping me out. You have no idea how much this means to me. Of course, you're like the daughter I never had, and I have to help you out in any way that I can. And if you need help with literally anything, feel free to reach out to me. I definitely will. The events that unfolded after that were nothing short of amazing. Valerie talked to her dad about everything that had happened and even gave him proof of Ethan's infidelity. Needless to say, he was beyond enraged. Valerie was his only daughter, and he was fiercely protective of her. So, of course, at her request, he fired Ethan in front of the entire office. He held a staff meeting and laid into Ethan for his incompetence and lack of loyalty. Ethan was red in the face from embarrassment and probably also anger, but he could not say anything against his father-in-law out of respect. The only reason I knew of any of this was because I got in touch with Valerie's dad and apologized to him for the way Ethan treated Valerie. He assured me that I had nothing to apologize for and told me that I had done way more good for Valerie than ever had my husband, Valerie's father, and I sat down after that and decided that if we wanted to take any further action to teach Ethan a lesson, it would be best for Ethan to no longer live anywhere near us. Together, we pooled all our contacts to ensure that nobody would hire Ethan. With all our reputations combined, that was a pretty easy task. Valerie also managed to reach out to Ethan's mistress, who was pregnant. She wasn't aware that Ethan was a married man and was very angry when she found out. She apologized profusely and told Valerie that she'd end her relationship with Ethan immediately, and she did. She also told Valerie that she would be fighting for full custody of their child and urged Valerie to do the same. By this point, several days had passed since Ethan got fired. Valerie lied and told him that she was staying with her parents because she couldn't take care of herself alone, which was kind of true considering how heavily pregnant she was. During the few days she was away, she also filed for a divorce. As soon as she got the divorce papers, she rushed over to my place to ask how to serve them to Ethan. However, Ethan also decided to show up at my house at that time. He saw Valerie's car in the driveway and practically stormed in through the front door in a rage. "What did you do? What on earth are you talking about, you manipulative snake? That is no way to talk to the mother of your child. Oh, were you in on this too?" "In on what exactly?" I don't have a job anymore. Really? Did my dad finally fire you? Finally, you wanted him to fire me? Why would he want his cheating son-in-law to work with him? How did you even find out about that? I happened to see you sitting with the woman you recently impregnated at a cafe. After that, all it took was one phone call to Valerie for the truth to unravel. So you two didn't think it was fair to approach me about it. You had to go and tell your dad, Valerie. And you had to get me fired for it. And Mom, did you not care that I would lose my livelihood? You are a disgrace to me and your dad. You deserve nothing less than this. Do you even know how humiliating that was at today's staff meeting? Valerie, your father yelled at me in front of everyone and then told me to get out of the office and out of your lives. Yeah, I have all your things packed. You can take them and go. You know what? I don't regret cheating on you. Of course you don't. You're a disgusting person, and we didn't expect anything more from you. No, you don't understand. Valerie was an absolute nightmare to deal with the second she became pregnant. She was always angry and always in pain. She snored so loud that I barely got any sleep, and she never did any of her work around the house. I would come back home from a tiring day of work to a dirty house and no food. Of course, I went to search for satisfaction elsewhere. You made me pregnant. Don't you dare forget that. You begged me to have your children even when I told you I didn't want children for another few years. And of course, I wasn't able to do much. I was in so much pain because of the pregnancy. You can't possibly blame me for that. And it's even more pathetic of you to blame Valerie's pregnancy for your incompetence as a husband. Your satisfaction should never have come first. Your first priority should have been Valerie and her well-being, something that I told you I would help you with. But you lied about doing it yourself. I had to lie. The two of you meddled too much, and I needed a foolproof plan to make sure I got what I wanted. Well, you just did. So don't blame me for the consequences of your actions. Surely you anticipated getting caught and paying for it, right? What I did not expect was you two teaming up against me. I don't see why I need to have any sympathy for you. Just take your things and get out. This is not over. I'm going to make your lives hell. Sure. Let me see how you do that when you have no job. What do you mean? Valerie's dad, your father, and I'd have made sure to put you on a statewide blacklist for your profession. No company is going to hire you. Good luck. Is this how you treat your own son? How can you betray your son this way? You are not my son anymore. You're nobody to me or your father. We want nothing to do with you. Do us a favor and block and delete our numbers from your phone. Now get out before we call the cops on you. Ethan looked at me like he had been slapped in the face. His eyes welled up with tears as the realization of his mistakes caught up with him. Did I feel an ounce of guilt or sympathy for him? Absolutely not. The only reason I was so enraged by his act was because I knew firsthand how a cheating partner could destroy a family. I went through it with my own parents, and the memories of my mother breaking down every single day because of how hurt she was still haunt me to this day. I felt no remorse or sympathy for Ethan, and frankly, neither did my husband. We had much more pressing matters to attend to anyway. Valerie was due to give birth only a few days after Ethan came over. We'd put Ethan on the back burner, but we made sure to change the hospital where Valerie was going to give birth, just to make sure that Ethan would not intrude. Thankfully, Valerie had a very healthy, normal birth, and I now have a beautiful baby grandson. A few weeks after Valerie gave birth, though, Ethan came back into our lives. He would come over to my house at any time of the day just to scream at me for ruining his life. He would first do that and then beg me for forgiveness. He tried to tell me that his other child with the other woman also needed him to be here. Apparently, his mistress got full custody of the kid, and he got visitation rights. But there was a clause. If he did not follow his visitation schedule and missed 5 visits, then he could kiss his visitation rights goodbye. It would not be possible for him to visit this child of his very often if he did not find a job in this state. And in fact, he wouldn't be able to see either of them. Ethan's mistress was very kind towards Valerie and recommended to Valerie the same lawyer she used against Ethan to get full custody of their child. Of course, Ethan did not make the divorce or any of the child custody agreements easy for Valerie. It took a long few months for the court to decide what to do, and finally, they ruled in Valerie's favor. She was given a majority of the assets, and she was granted full custody of my grandson. Ethan had the same laws applied to him with the custody of my grandchild as well, and when the verdict was announced, I could see how physically stressed Ethan was about it. My husband and I blocked Ethan everywhere, and after we threatened to get the cops involved again, Ethan stopped coming over to our house to yell profanities at me. My husband and I focused on taking care of Valerie and our grandson. They were our number one priority. We helped cover all the costs of the divorce and have been supporting Valerie ever since she gave birth. We felt it was the only way we could make it up to her for Ethan's horrible behavior. We're nearing the 1-year anniversary of finding out that Ethan had been cheating, and I can safely say that we're all in a better place right now. Well, except for Ethan. I heard through some extended family members that Ethan moved across the country and managed to land a job, but he's still doing miserably. I would feel bad, but I simply can't bring myself to. My grandson would have had a really hard time had Ethan's ways been exposed when my grandson was able to understand what was going on. I would never have let that happen, but the thought was enraging. For now, though, I'm in a better place. I do mourn the loss of the son I thought I had, but I'm in therapy to deal with all my bizarre emotions. I have people that genuinely care for me by my side, and that's all that matters. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
My name is Betty. I've been working in an office at a small company since I graduated from college. I've always been rather plain looking, which didn't make me very popular with guys, resulting in few romantic opportunities. Before I knew it, I was in my 30s without a boyfriend. Feeling lonely and worried about never getting married, I decided to take a leap of faith and signed up for a dating app. That's how I met and married my husband, Daniel. Daniel is 2 years younger than me at 28. Handsome and tall, he works in sales at a well-known company and is honestly way out of my league. Daniel is a kind-hearted man. He insisted that the bride should be the star of the wedding and let me have our ceremony in my hometown. Since my hometown is in the countryside, most of Daniel's friends couldn't attend, so he invited only a few close ones. Daniel told me, if Betty's happy, that's good enough for me, and encouraged me to invite a lot of my friends to the celebration. Little did I know who Daniel really was, but I felt blessed being surrounded by many friends at our wedding. That's when the shocking event happened. One day, I came home from work to find Daniel playing video games. I assumed he got off work early and started preparing dinner. As I nearly sliced my finger, he dropped a bombshell. He had quit his job. You quit without discussing it with me? I asked, astonished. There's nothing to discuss for adults. I can make my own career decisions, he replied nonchalantly. Sure, adults can make their own decisions, but aren't you supposed to consult your spouse before making such a significant life change? Shocked by the sudden news, I felt we needed a serious talk. Without taking his eyes off the game, Daniel answered my questions. Why did you quit your job? Did something bad happen? I asked. My boss was incompetent. I think there's a better place for me out there, he said. A better place? Like where? I pressed. I'll figure that out. Man, you're so annoying. Marrying an older woman is like being with my mom, he retorted. This wasn't the first time Daniel had mentioned my age. Each time, I would counter, then why did you marry me? He would casually reply, because a complicated woman like Betty needs a stable guy like me, which would always spark an argument. This time, I chose not to retort. The main issue at hand was our future lifestyle. It was clear that with Daniel quitting his job, we couldn't maintain our current way of life. Daniel, we're also sending money to your parents. Remember their rent is high, and if you're not working, there's no way my income alone can support both households. This had become a concern shortly after Daniel and I got married. Both of Daniel's parents, still in their 50s, had quit their jobs, claiming, our backs and shoulders hurt. We can't keep working this hard if we want to live a long life. That was their choice, and while it may sound cold, I thought they should live their lives as they please, so I didn't say anything. The situation changed the month after they quit their jobs. They came to our apartment asking for financial assistance. Oh, we don't have much in savings. If your parents are struggling, it'll be a problem for you too, Daniel, I said. So, we were convinced, and Daniel decided we would help with their rent and living expenses. They lived in a high-security, 4-bedroom apartment close to the station, and the rent was through the roof. After they left, cheerful about the financial help, I asked Daniel, "What about our own living expenses?" "Betty can cover our costs. I'm going to give my salary to Mom and Dad," he said. I wasn't happy. The thought of divorce crossed my mind. You should consider yourself lucky, a woman over 30 marrying a younger handsome guy like me. You're already winning. That's what he always said, making me feel worthless, so I couldn't muster the courage to leave him. If Daniel quit his job, sending money to his parents would be difficult. When I asked about this, he was too engrossed in his video game to pay any attention. Hey, what about the money for David and Catherine? Chopping carrots vigorously, I questioned him. Daniel clicked his tongue. Obviously, Betty will cover that. We're a couple. We're supposed to support each other. Until I find a suitable job, Betty will hold the fort. He went back to his game. I don't make a lot of money, and I was anxious about what the future held. But there was nothing I could do. Life slowly changed. We started draining our savings to help his parents. Daniel, although jobless, did nothing around the house. When I complained, he would say, "I should have never married an older woman. You're all so natty. You don't appreciate having a husband like me." As for his parents, they started complaining about the insufficient amount we were sending. "So, Betty, you're this age and not making much money? Have you been slacking off?" "Well, since Daniel used to be the one supporting you, it's high time you step up," they admonished me. I started doing some freelance illustrator work after my regular job just to bring in more money. Daniel, meanwhile, showed zero interest in looking for a job he considered suitable for himself. My love for Daniel, who spends his days playing video games at home or asking me for money to go to the casino, was running thin. When should we get a divorce? I wondered, thinking about when to divorce, yet what if the rest of my life is just me, all alone, kept me from taking the plunge. Then one day, after work, I was greeted by a stranger while I was in the supermarket. Who are you? You don't remember me, do you? We met at the wedding. I was friends with Daniel. I'm John. Taking a closer look at John's cheerful face, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh, John, you were one of the few friends Daniel invited to our wedding." Apparently just off work like me, John, in his suit, was filling his shopping cart with plenty of groceries. "I'm sorry I didn't recognize you. My husband has spoken highly of you." "Well, the thing is, I've actually cut ties with Daniel. I saw you and wondered if you're doing okay, so I thought I'd say hi." I was surprised to hear John speak of his friendship with Daniel in the past tense. I never thought he had actually severed ties. John then proceeded to explain to my astonished self that the reason Daniel held our wedding in my hometown wasn't out of kindness. The truth was, Daniel had very few friends. Apparently, Daniel spent most of his student life on slot machines and had a habit of borrowing money without paying it back. John was one of Daniel's college friends, and he was no exception. He had lent Daniel money but never got repaid. The reason he continued the friendship was because they worked at the same company, and John didn't want to rock the boat. Once Daniel quit his job, he immediately reached out to John for more money. That was the last straw for John. He cut off all contact. Do you know why Daniel was forced to quit his job? Forced to quit? I heard he left because he didn't get along with his boss. That's not it. Daniel was fired because they found out he was going to casinos when he was supposed to be on sales calls. I was shocked. This man, Daniel, had been lying to me since the beginning of our marriage. I felt as if the spell that made me believe women over 30 are worthless had finally broken. The feeling of "I can't forgive him" washed over me like a wave. I thanked John in a trembling voice for telling me the truth and said goodbye. A few days later, I spoke up to Daniel. "Daniel, I quit my job." Daniel, finally pausing his video game, looked utterly shocked. I put my mobile phone on the table, its screen displaying my banking app. "I have pretty much run out of savings since I have been sending money to David and Catherine. We have been bleeding cash. You have also been taking money from me for casinos and games. We're out of money." Daniel let out a voice of despair, saying, "What? What the heck is this? Given that our savings had dwindled down to almost nothing, his despair was understandable. What are we going to do now? How are we supposed to live if you quit your job when we're already low on money? That's not my problem. Speaking of which, I have loans I need to pay back. Could you maybe find a job quickly, Daniel? I want to take some time off and relax at home. Isn't it normal for spouses to support each other? It's hard for me to work now that I'm over 30, so now it's Daniel's turn to support me. Daniel, in disbelief, immediately called his parents. As soon as I told his parents about our situation, they showed up at our house. They began to berate us for not having money, searching the house suspecting we must have hidden it somewhere, but there was no money to be found. What was this large withdrawal? They questioned. That money was used to pay back debts, I answered accurately. That money was used to pay back a loan Daniel had taken from a friend. My own savings weren't enough, so I had to take out another loan to repay Daniel's friend. Who did you pay back, and why would you even bother paying back a loan now of all times? I only paid it back because I heard from John that Daniel had a lot of debt. I think it was the right thing to do. Daniel was the first to start yelling, "Let's divorce." As I calmly explained myself, even my parents-in-law agreed with Daniel. They forced me into their car and took me to the courthouse where I had to file for divorce on the spot. "Glad I won't have to see your broke old face anymore," Daniel said before leaving. I immediately headed to a cafe where John was already waiting. "John, sorry for the trouble. I was able to file for divorce successfully." "Oh good, I was worried, so it's a relief?" Actually, Daniel was the one who told me he wanted a divorce, but this was all a plan between John and me. Simply saying I wanted a divorce would have led to Daniel and his parents making a fuss, as they wouldn't want to let go of their cash cow. I figured the quickest way to sever ties with Daniel and his parents was to prove I had no value as their financial source. Fortunately, my side job as an illustrator had started to pay off, and I had saved quite a bit. I had this money deposited into a bank account that I kept hidden from Daniel and his parents. It's true that I repaid the money Daniel had borrowed from John, but I had actually given John more money than that amount. It was all part of the plan to lower my bank balance, and John was more than happy to go along with it. After successfully filing for divorce, John met me at the cafe to return the extra money. However, the envelope he handed me contained all the money I had given him. "John, this is too much. The money Daniel borrowed belongs to you, doesn't it?" "No, I only lent money to Daniel, not to you. When I gave Daniel the money, I had no intention of getting it back. I cut ties with him because I didn't like his attitude afterwards. So this is all your money. Having a bit more cash can't hurt when you're rebuilding your life." I could only feel gratitude toward John, who said this with a smile. He had opened my eyes to Daniel's true nature and had been part of my plan to divorce. I tried to give him some money as a token of my gratitude, but he only accepted enough to cover his coffee at the cafe. After meeting John, I stopped by my former workplace. I had left my hidden bank account card with the CEO for safekeeping. Though my boss understood my situation and regretted my departure, I had no choice but to quit since Daniel knew where I worked and could potentially cause trouble later. "It's been tough, but I wish you all the happiness in the world," he said as my coworkers gifted me a beautiful dress and shoes. Thrown out of my home in just a t-shirt, jeans, and sandals, they had gone shopping for me at a nearby store. "It's a gift. I hope you find happiness moving forward." Leaving my wonderful colleagues was hard, but I felt blessed to have worked in such a supportive environment. I decided to go back to my parents' house. When I was dragged to court from the home I had shared with Daniel, I had packed my work supplies and valuables in a bag so I could immediately start working as a freelance illustrator. Thankfully, my freelance work kept me financially stable. Daniel and his family, on the other hand, weren't so lucky. They couldn't pay the rent for the house they lived in and were evicted. They moved into the house Daniel and I used to share, but they lost that one too when they couldn't pay the rent. Daniel desperately started looking for a new job, but his gap in employment and homelessness made it difficult for him to find one. Currently, it seems they're living in a makeshift shack by a river near their old house. I know this because Daniel reached out to me once. When I answered the call from a public phone, Daniel was crying and told me how sorry he was. "I have realized I can't live without you, Betty. Can we please start over? You regretted marrying an older woman, didn't you? I'm done being your cash cow. Goodbye." After that call, I never answered another from a public phone. The parents' house is quite a distance away from where Daniel is located in the countryside. Daniel, who doesn't have much money, probably can't afford to make the trip all the way here. The lesson I've learned from my failed marriage is that there's no rush to get married, whether you're 30 or 50. Living the way you want to is what truly matters. For making me realize that, I guess I owe Daniel a tiny bit of thanks.
Today, my little brother's fiancé came over to meet us for the first time. Our relatives gathered, and we were all eagerly anticipating this new addition to the family. However, the visit took an unexpected turn. "But you're just a burden in this society. Having your little brother support you," she bluntly criticized me to my face. Though I had always wished for my brother's happiness, hearing such harsh words from his fiancé hit me hard. Yet her comment also illuminated the deep-seated feelings my brother had been harboring. "My name is Sylvia Gibson, and my little brother Tristan and I share a significant 14-year age gap. Since his birth, I've been taking care of him alongside our mom. We used to be a close-knit family of 4: Mom, Dad, Tristan, and me. But one day, tragedy struck our happy family. I was 18 when it happened. We were out shopping, and on the way back, the car's tire blew out, causing us to crash hard into a wall. That accident took away our dad, who was driving, and our mom, who was in the passenger seat. I ended up with a lasting injury on my legs from being trapped in the back seat. Miraculously, Tristan, who was sitting next to me, came out unscathed. Our real struggle began from there. With our parents gone, it was just the two of us trying to make a life. Although we received support from our grandma and other relatives, we didn't want to leave the house we had shared with our parents. It was a strong wish we both held on to. At that time, I was about to graduate from high school. I decided to forgo college and work instead, hoping to support us. However, reality hit hard. Life was not easy with my mobility limitations from the leg injuries, and my job options were limited. Despite these challenges, I pushed through, working hard at any job I could manage and taking care of Tristan. Since I couldn't attend college, I had a deep desire for Tristan to earn a degree. I worked relentlessly toward that goal every day. It was tough, but watching him grow kept me motivated and encouraged. Eventually, he made it to college. After graduating, he found a job and stepped into the real world. I'll never forget the image of him in a suit, confidently leaving for his first day at work. As time passed, I aged before I knew it, and I turned 40 last month. Tristan and I still live together. Since he started working, he has been contributing to the household finances every single month. I can't help but be impressed by his consistent support. Now in his 3rd year in the workforce, he is 26 and has grown into a responsible young man. Just when I thought he had fully settled into his job, he revealed something unexpected. "Listen, Sylvia, I asked my girlfriend to marry me," he said, all shy and embarrassed. He wanted to introduce his fiancée to me. My heart swelled with joy as I listened to him. I thought he had matured into a good man and was super excited to meet her. She's gorgeous. It was love at first sight for me. She finally said yes after my persistent pursuit. Tristan said, surprising me with his passionate side. As he spoke fervently, I found it adorable and couldn't help but smile. "We're thinking about the wedding once we've saved up some money. For now, we're considering getting the paperwork done and moving in together," he explained. "Well, if you say so, I have no objection. You should introduce her to Grandma and Uncle Jason too," I suggested. He agreed with my suggestion. Grandma and Uncle Jason were the relatives we had been most indebted to. I promptly contacted them, and they were just as delighted. "Wow, he's getting married already. That's great news. It's all thanks to your hard work, Sylvia. Congratulations," they said. I expressed my heartfelt gratitude for their blessings. "We couldn't have made it without your support. Thank you so much." I choked up with tears, remembering how they had silently supported us, respecting our desire to live on our own in the family home. Of course, we wanted to invite them to meet his fiancée. Try to picture what kind of person she was. given his enthusiastic pursuit. I had no doubt she was a wonderful girl. At that time, I was eagerly looking forward to meeting her without any doubts. The big day finally arrived. Grandma and Uncle Jason were over, eagerly waiting for Tristan's fiancée. Can't believe he's getting married. I wonder what she's like. Grandma squinted her eyes with a delighted smile. Uncle Jason chimed in. He's always been the type to go all out for his partner. I hope he didn't fall for some troublemaker. True, he has had this habit forever, going all out for someone he's into. Initially, the other person is happy about it, but eventually, they start taking it for granted. Things either end with him getting dumped or fading out. I agreed. As long as he's happy, I guess it's all good, Uncle Jason concluded. Just as I was pondering, there was the sound of the front door opening. Hey guys, we're here, Tristan called out, heading to the entrance to greet them. I found a beautiful girl standing next to Tristan. Her name was Lou, 4 years older than him. She had an elegant figure, and I couldn't help but think she was way too good for him. But then an alarm went off inside me. When we greeted Lou, Tristan said, "This is my sister, Sylvia." "Oh, hi," she said casually. A bit puzzled, I responded with a smile. "Nice to meet you. I'm glad you came. Please come inside. Grandma and Uncle Jason are here too." Assuming she might be nervous, I guided them to the living room. As we talked, I figured out why I felt alarmed earlier. She wasn't exactly the friendliest person. Tristan's always been a bit absent-minded, you know. Hope he hasn't been causing you any trouble. Tried to make conversation. Not really, she replied curtly. With the relatives here today, maybe you're feeling a bit nervous? I suggested. No, she responded with just a couple of words. Most people would put on a smile and act friendly in a situation like this, but she maintained a sullen expression throughout. I initially thought she might be nervous, but she remained the same. Trying to ease the tension, I dropped the serious talk and tried to make some small talk. "Is there something you enjoy doing?" I asked, trying to lighten the mood. She sighs and suddenly stands up. "There's something I've been wanting to say to you." I was flabbergasted by her sudden confrontation. What she said next was even more unbelievable. "You rely financially on your little brother because of your disability, right? Living off him, you're just trash in this society," she exclaimed loudly. Her words froze me, Tristan, Grandma, and Uncle Jason. It felt like time stood still, and everyone just gaped at her. What the heck did she just say? I glared at her, holding back my rage. Tristan spoke up first in the tense situation. "Lou, what are you saying? You know she's a business owner." Seeing him suppressing his anger was something out of the ordinary. He rarely got mad at others. But Lou wouldn't let up. "A business owner? Well, if you're running a business, it's not going well, is it? After all, you're taking money from him every month. It's weird to do that at your age. I won't let anyone, even you, criticize my sister," Tristan said firmly. "You don't get it. You keep giving your money away. That's why we can't even have a wedding." As I was about to calm the heated situation, Grandma spoke up before me. "Tristan, Lou, why don't you calm down a bit?" With her gentle expression, they started to regain some composure. "We came here to celebrate you too, so stop fighting." Uncle Jason followed suit, and both of them fell silent. "Lou, do you know the history of Sylvia and Tristan?" "I've heard a bit," Lou replied. "All right, maybe I should tell you again. Listen up." Grandma began recounting the story. She talked about the time our parents passed away when Tristan was 4 and my legs were injured at the same time, how I'd been taking care of and supporting him since then. When she finished, Lou turned to her with a question. "So why didn't you guys lend a hand? I've heard they didn't want to leave this house. But come on, living just the two of them wasn't realistic. Her words and tone infuriated me. Grandma glanced at Uncle Jason and surprisingly put a smile on her face. Well, that might be the usual way of things, but you see, we saw their seriousness in their eyes, so we decided to watch over them. At that moment, I understood how she felt back then for the first time. Uncle Jason took over. Of course, we were worried sick about these kids. We tried reaching out to help multiple times, but their determination to live on their own was incredibly strong. Eventually, we decided to watch over them from a bit of a distance, just in case they needed help. Both Grandma and Uncle Jason did exactly that with so much love and compassion. Thanks to them, we've made it this far. Sylvia worked hard at her job for Tristan. After graduating high school, she worked so diligently that you wouldn't have even noticed her disability. I can still see it clearly in my mind. Uncle Jason nodded along. Yeah, thanks to her, Tristan was able to go to college. Grandma added. Lou threw another question. I get that she worked hard to raise him, but what's it got to do with taking money? Regardless of her tone, Grandma calmly responded without getting upset. As Tristan mentioned earlier, she's a business owner. She's not struggling for money at all. Have you heard about that patisserie that's often featured in magazines? Grandma spread out pamphlets from the shop on the table. Lou looked at it with a puzzled expression. Yeah, I know about it, but what's the point? With a slightly pleased expression, Grandma said, she's been running this shop. What? Lou looked shocked. The shop that hired me after high school was initially a small cake shop in my hometown. The cakes were delicious, and I wanted more people to know about them. So I revamped the website, asked influencers and bloggers for collaborations, and actively promoted it. Gradually, it gained popularity, which led to expansion. Now we have 10 stores nationwide. 2 years ago, the owner fell ill, and I was appointed as the new CEO. It's been hectic, but I'm feeling fulfilled. So you see, maybe it's unnecessary to say this again, but Sylvia isn't struggling for money. Having learned my true identity, Lou seemed thoroughly deflated. Then Tristan spoke up. Lou, the money is something I'm forcefully giving to my sister. She looked at him, confused. It's only natural for me to be grateful to my sister who raised me in place of our parents. She gave up going to college for my sake and has been living for me. This is my way to express that gratitude. I'm repaying not just with words but also with my expenses. Hearing this from Tristan for the second time, I felt a special warmth. The first time he mentioned paying me back, I declined, but he awkwardly and forcefully insisted I accept the money. Today, his speech exuded genuine gratitude, and it warmed my heart. I didn't expect to hear something like this from you here of all places. Today, I just wanted to introduce you to my sister and relatives as my fan Kay, because you don't seem so well off even though you're working at a good company. Lou blurted out her true feelings. I instinctively put my hand on my forehead. Oh no, he did it again. Grandma and Uncle Jason rolled their eyes, sharing my exasperation. In other words, he still needs to develop a keen eye for women. Sensing our unspoken thoughts, Tristan told Lou, sorry, but let's just forget about us. We'll call off the engagement. And so, Tristan and Lou parted ways. Her appearance was stunning, but her behavior during our first meeting and the way she insulted me didn't make me want to become family with her. I really don't have a good eye for these things, Tristan mumbled, letting out a sigh of despair. Comforting him was challenging. You're only 26. Why rush into a marriage so soon? Well, I thought about getting married because I wanted to free you. What? I asked, surprised. You've always put me first. I felt that and I'm truly grateful. But I want you to start thinking about your own happiness. So, he was rushing into marriage out of concern for me. Realizing his honest feelings, my eyes teared up. I tousled his hair to distract myself from becoming too emotional. Anyhow, you need to improve your judgment of people. But thanks. Of course, I always wish for your happiness. His words made me feel like all the struggles I'd been through were finally paying off. Reflecting on my life, it's indeed been centered around him since our parents passed away. I've been relentless in my dedication to work, avoiding any troubles for him and concerns for our relatives. My own love life, interests, and leisure activities were all put on hold. There were tough times, moments when I wondered why it was only me. Because of this incident, I finally understood his genuine sentiments towards me. From now on, I'm not going to focus solely on work, but also consider my own happiness and enrich my personal life. Even if something happens to me, instead of taking it negatively, I'll choose to view it positively, believing that embracing a positive mindset will lead to a brighter future. It's not just about me, it will also contribute to Tristan's happiness. From now on, I'm determined to enjoy my life more than anyone else.